Herman Melville's Clarel. Read by Luke Johnson for Noetic. This recording copyright 2020 Noetic Series LLC. All rights reserved. Dedication. By a spontaneous act, not very long ago, my kinsman, the late Peter Ganasavot of Albany, New York, in a personal interview, provided for the publication of this poem, known to him by report as existing in manuscript. Justly and affectionately, the printed book is inscribed in his name. Part 1, Jerusalem. Canto 1, The Hostel. In chamber low and scored by time, masonry old, late, washed with lime, much like a tomb new, cut in stone, elbow on knee, and, brow sustained, all motionless, on sidelong hand, a student sits and broods alone. The small, deep casement sheds a ray, which tells that in the holy town, it is the passing of the day. The vigil of Epiphany, beside him in the narrow cell, his luggage lies unpacked thereon. The dust lies, and on him as well. The dust of travel, but anon, his face he lifts, in feature fine, yet pale and all but feminine. But for the eye and seer's brow, then rises, paces to and fro, and pauses, saying, other cheer than that anticipated here, by me the learner now I find. Theology, art thou so blind? What means this naturalistic knell, in lieu of Silo's oracle, which here should murmur, snatched from grace, and waylaid in the holy place? Not thus. It was but yesterday, off Jaffa on the clear blue sea, nor thus my heart, it was with thee, landing amid the shouts and spray, nor thus when mounted, full equipped, out through the vaulted gate we slipped, beyond the walls where gardens bright, with bloom and blossom cheered the sight. The plain we crossed in afternoon, how like our early autumn bland, so softly tempered for a boon, the breath of Sharon's prairie land. And was it, yes, her titled rose, that scarlet poppy oft at hand? Then Ramla gleamed, the sail white town, at even. There I watched day close, from the fair tower, the suburb one, seaward in dazing set the sun. Inland I turned me, toward the wall of Ephraim, stretched in purple pall. Romance of mountains, but in end, what change the near approach could lend. Then start this morning, gun and lance, against the quarter moon's low tide. The thieves' huts, where we hushed the ride, chill daybreak in the lorn advance. In stony strait the scorch of noon, thrown off by crags, reminding one of those hot Paynims, whose fierce hands flung showers of Afric's fiery sands. In face of that Crusader king, Louis to wither so his wing, and at the last aloft for goal, like the ice bastions round the pole. Thy blank towers, Jerusalem. Again he droops with brow on hand, but starting up, why well I knew Salem to be no Samarcand. 'Twas scarce surprise, and yet first view brings this eclipse. Needs be my soul, purged by the desert's subtle air, from bookish vapors now is air, to nature's influx of control, comes likewise now to consciousness, of the true import of that press, of inklings which in travel late, through Latin lands did vex my state, and somehow seemed clandestine. Ah, these underformings in the mind, banked corals which ascend from far, but little heed men that they wind, unseen, unheard, till lo the reef and breaker, wreck and grief, but here unlearning, how to me, opes the expanse of time's vast sea. Yes, I am young, but Asia old. The books not all have told. And for the rest, the facile chat of overweenings, what was that? The grave one said, in Jaffa Lane, whom there I met my countrymen, but new return from travel here, some word of mine provoked the strain. His meaning now begins to clear. Let me go over it again. Our new world's worldly wit so shrewd lacks the Semitic reverent mood. Unworldly, hardly may confer fitness for just interpreter of Palestine. Forgo the state of local minds, inveterate, tied to one poor and casual form, to avoid the deep saves not from storm. Those things he said and added more, no clear authenticated lore, I deemed, but need now confess, my cultivated narrowness. Though scarce indeed of sort he meant, 'tis the uprooting of content. So he, the student, 'twas a mind, earnest by nature, long confined, apart like Vesta in a grove, collegiate, but let to rove, at last abroad among mankind, and here in end, confronted so by the true genius, friend or foe, an actual visage of a place, before but dreamed of in the glow of fancy's spiritual grace. Further his meditations aim, reverting to his different frame, bygone, and then can faith remove her light because of late no plea I've lifted to her source above. Dropping thereat upon the knee, his lips he parted, but the word against the utterance demurred and failed him. With infirm intent he sought the housetop, set of sun, his feet upon the yet warm stone. He, Clarel, by the coping leant, in silent gaze. The mountain town, a walled and battlemented one, with houseless suburbs, front and rear, and flanks built up from steeps severe, saddles and turrets the ascent, tower which rides the elephant. Hence large the view. There where he stood was Acre's upper neighborhood. The circling hills he saw, with one excelling ample in its crown, making the uplifted city low. By contrast, Olivet, the flow of eventide was at full brim. Overlooked the houses sloped from him, terraced or domed, unchimneyed gray, all stone, a moor of roofs, no play. Of life no smoke went up, no sound, except low hum, and that half drowned. The inn abutted on the pool, named Hezekiah's, a sunken court, where silence and seclusion rule. Hemmed round by walls of nature's sort, based to stone structures seeming one, even with the steeps they stand upon. As a three-deckers, stern lights peer, down on the oily wake below, down the sleek dark waters here. The inn's small lattices bestow a rearward glance, and here and there, in flaws the languid evening air, stirs the dull weeds adust, which trail in festoons from the crag and vale. The ancient fissures overtopped by the tall convent of the Copt, built like a lighthouse over the main. Blind arches showed in walls of wane, sealed windows, portals masoned fast, and terraces where nothing passed. By parapets all dumb, no tarn, among the Catskills, high above, farmhouse and stack, last lichened barn, and log bridge rotting in remove. More lonesome looks than this dead pool, in town where living creatures rule. Not here the spell might he undo, the strangeness haunted him and grew. But twilight closes, he descends, and toward the inner court he wends. Canto 2, Abdon. A lamp in archway hangs from key, a lamp whose sidelong rays are shed on a slim vial set in bed, of doorpost all of masonry. That vial hath the Gentile vexed, within it holds Talmudic text, or charm, and there the black Jew sits, Abdon the host, the lamp light flits, over reverend beard of saffron hue, sweeping his robe of Indian blue, disturbed and troubled in estate, longing for solacement of mate. Clarel in court there, nearer drew, as yet unnoted for the host, in meditation seemed engrossed, perchance upon some line late scanned in leathern scroll that drooped from hand. Ere long, without, surprise expressed, the lone man marked his lonelier guest, and welcomed him. Discourse was bred. In end a turn it took and led to grave recital. Here was one, if question of his word be none, descended from those dubious men, the unreturning tribes, the 10, whom shout and hallo wide have sought, lost children in the wood of time. Yes, he, the black Jew, stinting not, averred that ancient India's clime harbored the remnant of the tribes, a people settled with their scribes in far Cochin. There was he born and nurtured, and there yet his kin, never from true allegiance torn, kept Moses' law. Cochin, mused Clarel, I have heard indeed of those black Jews, their ancient creed and hoar tradition. Esdras saith, the 10 tribes built in Arsareth, eastward, still eastward. That may be. But look, the scroll of goatskin, see, wherein he reads a wizard book. It is the Indian Pentateuch, whereof they tell, whatever the plea, and scholars various notions hold, touching these missing clans of old. This seems a deeper mystery, how Judah, Benjamin live on, unmixed into time's swamping sea, so far can urge their Amazon. He pondered, but again the host, narrating part his lifetime tossed, told how long since, with trade in view, he sailed from India with a Jew, and merchant of the Portuguese, for Lisbon. More he roved the seas, and marts, till in the last event, he pitched in Amsterdam his tent. There had I lived my life, he said, among my kind for good they were, but loss came loss, and I was led to long for Judah, only her. But see, he rose and took the light, and led within, there ye espy, what prospects left to such as I? Yonder, a dark slab stood upright against the wall, a rude gravestone, sculptured with Hebrew ciphers strown. Under Moriah it shall lie, no distant date, for very soon, ere yet a little, and I die. From end to Zion have I come, but less to live than end at home. One other last remove, he sighed, and meditated on the stone. Lamp held aloft, that magnified the hush throughout, the dim unknown of night, night in a land how dead. Through Clarel's heart the old man's strain, dusky meandered in a vein. One with the reverie it bred, his eyes still dwelling on the Jew, an added dream so strange a shade, of swartness like a born Hindu, and wizen visage which betrayed the Hebrew caste, and subtle yet, an ebon frame and amulet, which on his robe the patriarch wore, and scroll and vial in the door. These two contributed in kind. They parted. Clarel sought his cell, or tomb-like chamber, and with mind to break or intermit the spell, at least perplex it and impede, lighted the lamp of olive oil, and brushing from a trunk the soil. 'Twas one late purchased at his need. Opened and strove to busy him with small adjustments, bootless cheer, while wavering now in chanceful skim, his eyes fell on the word Judea, in paper lining of the tray, for all was trimmed in cheaper way, with printed matter, curious then to know this fated denizen. He read and found a piece complete, briefly comprised in one poor sheet. The world accosts, last one out of Holy Land, what gift bringest thou? Sycam grapes, Tabor which the Eden drapes, yieldeth garlands. I demand something cheery at thy hand. Come, if Solomon's song thou singest, haply Sharon's rose thou bringest. The palmer replies, nay, not thou namest thy servant brings. Only Judea my feet did roam, and mainly there the pilgrim clings about the precincts of Christ's tomb. These palms I bring from dust not free, since dust and ashes both were trod by me. Overtrue thy gift, thought Clarel, well scarce might the world accept, 'twould seem, but shall I my feet impel through road like thine and not redeem. Rather through breaks, lone breaks, I wind, as I advance they close behind. Thought's burden on the couch he throws, himself in it rises and goes, to peer from casement, 'twas moonlight, with stars the olive hill in sight, distinct yet dreamy in repose, as of Cotton in a hot noon, lonely with all his pines and swoon. The nature and evangel clashed, rather a double mystery flash. Olivet, do I see the ideal upland trod by thee? Up or reclined he felt the soul, afflicted by that noiseless calm, till sleep the good nurse deftly stole the bed beside, and for a charm took the pale hand within her own, nor left him till the night was gone. Canto 3. The Sepulchre. In Crete they claimed the tomb of Jove, and glen over which his eagles soar. But through a peopled town ye rove, to Christ's low urn, where nigh the door settles the dove, so much the more. The contrast stamps the human God who dwelt among us, made abode with us, and was of woman born, partook our bread and thought no scorn to share the humblest, homeliest hearth, shared all of man except the sin and mirth. Such among thronging thoughts may stir, and pilgrim pressing through the lane that dusty wins the reverend fane, seat of the holy sepulchre, and naturally named therefrom. What altars old in cluster rare, and grotto shrines engird the tomb, caves in a crag, and more is there, and halls monastic join their gloom. To some incomprehensive bounds, the passion's drama with its grounds, immense the temple, winds and strays, finding each storied precinct out, absorbs the sights all round about, omnivorous and a world of maze. And yet time was when all here stood, separate and from rood to rood, chapel to shrine or tent to tent, unsheltered still the pilgrim went. Where now enroofed the whole coheres, where now through influence of years and spells by many a legend lent, a sort of nature reappears, somber or sad and much in tone, perhaps with that which here was known of yore when from this Salem height, then sylvan in primeval plight, down came to Chavez, dale, and with wine, and bread after the 4 kings' check, the druid priest Melchizedek, Abram to bless with rites divine. What rustlings here from shadowy spaces, deep vistas where the votary paces, will strangely intermitting creep, like steps in Indian forests deep. How bird-like steals the singer's note down from some rail or arch remote, while glimmering where kneelers be, small lamps dispersed with glowworm light, mellow the vast nave's azure night, and make a haze of mystery. The blurs spread 1,000 years, and Calvary's seen as through one's tears. In cloistral walks the dome detains, hermits which during public days seclude them where the shadow stays, but issue when charmed midnight reigns, unshod with tapers lit, and roam according as their hearts appoint, the purliest of the central tomb in round of altars and anoint with fragrant oils each marble shelf, where all alone strange solace find, and oratory to their mind. Lone locked within the tomb itself, cells note ye as in bower a nest, where some sedate rich devotee or grave guest monk from oversea takes up through Lent his votive rest, adoring from his saintly perch Golgotha and the guarded urn, and mysteries everywhere expressed, until his soul in rapt sojourn add one more chapel to the church. The friars in turn which tend the fane, dress it and keep a home make there, nor pass for weeks the gate. Again each morning they ascend the stair of Calvary with cloth and broom, for dust thereon will settle down and gather too upon the tomb, and places of the passions moan, tradition not device and fraud. Here rules tradition old and broad, transfixed in sights the drama shown, each given spot, sign 'tis here they scourged him, soldiers yonder nailed the victim to the tree, in jeer, there stood the Jews, there Mary paled, the vesture was divided here, a miracle play of haunted stone, a miracle play, a phantom one, with power to give, pause or subdue, so that whatever comment be, serious if to faith, unknown, not possible seems levity, or aught that may approach thereto. And sooth to think what numbers here, age after age, have worn the stones in suppliance or judgment fear. What mourners men and women's moans, ancestors of ourselves indeed. What souls whose penance of remorse, made poignant by the elder creed, found honest language in the force of chains entwined that ate the bone. How here's a Becket slayers clung, taking the contrite anguish on, and in release from fast and thong, buried upon Moriah, sleep, with more, much more, such ties so deep, endear the spot or false or true, as an historic site, the wrong of carpings never may undo, the nerves that clasp about the plea, tingling with kinship, through and through, faith childlike and the tried humanity, while little here moves hearts of some, rather repugnance grave or scorn, or cynicism to mark the dome, beset in court or yard forlorn, by peddlers versed in wonted tricks, vendors of charm or crucifix, or on saint days to hark the din, as during market day at inn, and polyglot of Asian tongues and island ones in interchange, buzzed out by crowds in costumes strange, of nations diverse. Are these throngs merchants? Is this Cairo's bazaar and concourse? Nay, thy strictures bar. It is but simple nature. See, none mean irreverence, though free, unvexed by Europe's grieving doubt, which ask and can the Father be, those children of the climes devout, on festival and fane installed, happily ignorant, make glee, like orphans in the playground walled, others the duskiness may find, imbued with more than nature's gloom, these loitering hard by the tomb, alone and when the days declined, so that the shadow from the stone whereon the angel sat is thrown to distance more, and sigh or sound echoes from place of Mary's moan, or cavern where the cross was found, or mouse stirs steals upon the ear from where the soldier reached the spear, shrink much like Ludovico erst within the haunted chamber. Thou, less sensitive, yet haply versed, and everything above, below, and all but thy deep human heart, thyself perchance mayst nervous start at thine own fancy's final range, who here wouldst mock with mystic smart, the subtle eld can slight avenge, but jibe on until there crawl about thee in the scorner's seat, reactions and pride's Smyrna shawl, plague strike the wearer, retreat. But how of some which still deplore, yet share the doubt? Here evermore, 'tis good for such to turn afar from the skull's place, even Golgotha, and view the cedarn dome and sun, pierced like the marble Pantheon. No blurring pane, but open sky, and their day peeps, their stars go by, and in still hours which these illume, heaven's dews drop tears upon the tomb, nor lack their dreams romance can thrill, and hush when tides and towns are still. Godfrey and Bodwin, from their graves made meetly near the rescued stone, rise in arms with beaming glaives. They watch and ward the urn they won. So fancy deals a light achiever, imagination earnest ever, recalls the Friday far away, relives the crucifixion day. The passion and its sequel proves, sharing the three pale Mary's frame. Through the eclipse with these she moves, back to the house from which they came, to Golgotha. O empty room, O leaden heaviness of doom, O cowering hearts which sore beset, deem vain the promise now, and yet invoke him who returns, no call, and fears for more that may befall. O terror linked with love, which cried, Art gone? Is it o'er and crucified? Who might foretell, from such dismay, of blank recoilings, all the blessed lilies and anthems which attest the floral Easter holiday? Canto 4 of the Crusaders. When sighting first the towers afar, which girt the object of the war, and votive march, the Saviour's tomb, what made the reader us, knights so shy? And wherefore did they doff the plume, and baldric kneel in dust and sigh? Hardly it serves to quote Voltaire, and say they were freebooters, hence, incapable of awe or sense. Pathetic, no, for man is heir to complex moods, and in that age, belief devout and bandit rage, frequent were joined, and even today, at shrines on the Calabrian steep. Not insincere, while feelings sway, the brigand halts to adore, to weep. Grant then the worst is all romance, which claims that the Crusader's glance was blurred by tears. But if that round of disillusions which accrue, Canto 5, Clarel. Upon the morrow's early morn, Clarel is up and seeks the urn. Advancing towards the fane's old arch of entrance, curved in sculptured stone, dim and defaced, he saw thereon, from rural Bethany, the march of Christ into another gate, the golden and triumphal one, upon palm morn, for porch to shrine, on such a site, how fortunate that adaptation of design. Well might it please. He entered, then. Strangers were there of each degree, from Asian shores with island men, mild guests of the Epiphany, as when to win the Paschal joy and Nisan's festal month renew, the Nazarenes to temple drew, even Joseph, Mary, and the boy, whose hand the mothers held. So here to later rites and altars dear, domestic in devotion's flame, husbands with wives and children came, but he, the student under dome, pauses, he stands before the tome. Through open door he sees the wicks, all right within where 6 and 6. For Christ's apostles, night and day, lamps, olden lamps, do burn. In smoke befogged, they shed no vivid ray, but heat the cell and seem to choke. He marked, and reverie took flight. These burn not like those aspects bright of starry watchers when they kept vigil at napkined feet and head of him their Lord. Nay, is he fled? Of trance lies trance, nor unbewept with Dorian gods, or fresh and clear, a charm diffused throughout the sphere, streams in the ray through yonder dome. Not here said he is, but hath ghost home, dispersed in soil and sea and air, false pantheism, false though fair. So he in slack and aimless went, nor might untwine the ravelment of doubts perplexed for easement there, halting a while in pillared shade. A friar he marked in robe of blue, and round Greek cap of sable hue. Poor men he led, much haste he made, nor sequence kept, but dragged them so, hither and thither, to and fro, to random places. Might it be that Clarel, who recoiled, did hear, shared but that shock of novelty, which makes some Protestants unglad, first viewing the mysterious cheer in Peter's fane, beheld he had in Rome beneath the Lateran wall, the Scala Santa, watched the knees of those ascending devotees, who absolution so to reap, breathe a low prayer at every step. Nay, 'twas no novelty at all, nor was it that his nature shrunk, but from the curtness of the monk. Another influence made swerve, and touched him in profounder nerve. He turned, and passing on enthralled, one a still chapel, and one spake the name, brief scripture here recalled, the context less obscure may make. 'Tis writ that in a garden's bound our Lord was earned, on that green ground. He reappeared by Mary claimed, the place or place alleged is shown. Arbors congealed to vaults of stone, the apparition's chapel named. This was the spot where now in frame, hard to depict, the student came. The spot where in the dawning gray, his pallor with night's tears bedewed, restored the second Adam stood, not as in Eden stood the first, already, yet in leaves immersed in twilight of imperfect day. Christ seemed the gardener unto her, misjudging who in womanhood had sought him late in sepulchre. Embowered nor found, here votive here by the shrine that Clarel won, a wreath shed odors, scarce that cheer, warmed some poor Greek's recumbent throne, sore from late journeying far and near, to hallowed haunts without the town. So wearied that no more they kneeled, but overnight here laid them down, matrons and children yet unhealed of ache. And each face was a book of disappointment. Why weepest thou, whom seekest? Words which chanceful now, recalled by Clarel, he applied to these before him, and he took, in way but little modified, heart to himself, then stood in dream, Of all which yet might hap to them, he saw them spent, provided ill, pale huddled in the pilgrim fleet, back voyaging now to homes afar. Midnight and rising tempest beat, such as St. Paul knew, furious war, to meet which slender is the skill. The lamp that burnt upon the prow and wonted shrine extinct is now, drowned out with heaven's last feeble star. Panic ensues, their course is turned. Toward Tyre they drive, Tyre undiscerned, a coast of wrecks which warping bleach on wrecks of piers where eagles screech. How hopeful from their isles serene they sailed, and on such tender quest, then after toils that came between, they re-embarked, and though distressed, grieved not, for Zion had been seen. Each wearing next the heart for charm, some priestly script in leaf of palm. But these are these in dawn's pale rain, asleep upon beach Tyrian. Or is it sleep? No rest that rest, which naught shall ruffle or molest. In gliding turn of dreams which mate, he saw from forth Damascus's gate. Tall Islam in her Mamal go, elected camel, king of all, in mystic housings draped in flow, silk fringed with many a silver ball, worked ciphers on the Koran's car, and Sultan's cloth. He hears the jar of Janissaries armed a throng, which drum barbaric, shout and gong, invest, and camels robe and shawl of riders which they bear along, each sheik a pagod on his tower, cross-legged and dusky, there withal, an affluence of the opal, hour, curveting troops of Moslem peers, and flash of scimitars and spears, and groves of grass-green pennons fair, like Pharaon's palms in fanning air, wherefrom the crescent silvery soars. Then crowds pell-mell, a concourse wild, convergings from Levantine shores, on foot, on donkeys, litters rare, whole families, twin panniers piled, rich men and beggars all beguiled, to cheerful trust in Allah's care, Allah toward whose prophets earn, and holy city fond they turn, as forth in pilgrimage they fare. But long the way, and when they note, ere yet they pass wide, suburbs green, some camp in field, nor far remote, inviting pastoral and scene, some child shall leap and trill in glee, Mecca, 'tis Mecca, mother see. Then first she thinks upon the waste, whither the Simom maketh haste, where baskets of the white-ribbed dead sift the fine sand, while dim ahead, in long, long line their way to tell, the bones of camels bleaching dwell, with skeletons but part interred, relics of men which friendless fell, whose own hands in last office scooped over their limbs the sand, but drooped worse than the desert of the word. El Te, the great, the terrible, ere town and tomb shall greet the eye. Many shall fall, nor few shall die, which punctual at set of sun, spread the worn prayer cloth on the sand, turning them toward the Mecca stone, their shadows ominously thrown, oblique against the mummy land. These past they fade, what next comes near? The tawny peasants' human wave, which rolls over India year by year. India, the spawning place and grave, the turbaned billow floods the plains, rolling toward Brahma's rarer fanes, his Compostelle or brown Lorette, where sin absolved may grief forget, but numbers, plague struck faint and sore, drop livid on the flowery shore, arrested with the locusts' sleep, or passed to muster where no man may peep. That vision waned, and far afloat, from eras gone he caught the sound of hordes from China's furthest moat, crossing the Himalayan mound to kneel at shrine or relic so of Buddha, the Mongolian foe, or Indian savior? What profound impulsion makes these tribes to range, stable in time's incessant change? Now first he marks, now awed he heeds the inter-sympathy of creeds, alien or hostile, though they seem, exalted thought or groveling dream. The worn Greek matrons mark him there. Ah, young, our lassitude doth share. Home do thy pilgrim reverie stray. Art thou too weary of the way? Yes, sympathies of Eve awake, yet do but err. For how might break upon those simple natures true? The complex passion, might they view? The apprehension, tempest tossed, the spirit in gulf of dizzying fable lost? Canto 6, Tribes and Sects. He turned to go, he turned but stood, and many notes of varying keys, from shrines like coves in Jordan's wood, hark to the rival liturgies, which rolling underneath the dome, resound about the patient tomb and penetrate the aisles. The rite of Georgian and Maronite, Armenian and fervid Greek, the Latin organ and wild clash of cymbals smitten cheek to cheek, which the dark Abyssinian sways, these like to tides, together dash and question of their purport raise. If little of the words he knew, might Clarel's fancy forge a clue? A malediction seemed each strain, himself the mark. O heart profane, O pilgrim infidel, begone, nor hear the sights of faith pollute. Those who misgivest we enthrone, a god untrue and myth absurd, as monstrous figments blabbed of Jove. Or worse, rank lies of Islam's herd. We know thee, thou there standing mute. Out, begone, try nature's reign, who deemest the supernature vain. To Lot's wave by black Kedron rove, on by Mount Seir, through Edom move. There crouch thee with the jackal down, crave solace of the scorpion. 'Twas fancy troubled, fancy weaved, those imputations half believed. The porch he neared, the chorus swelled, he went forth like a thing expelled. Yet going, he could but recall the wrangles here which oft befall, contentions for each holy place, and jealousies how far from grace. O bickering family, bereft, was feud the heritage he left? Canto 7, Beyond the Walls. In street at hand a silence reigns, which nature's hush of loneness feigns. Few casements, few, and latticed deep, high raised above the head below, that none might listen, pry or peep, or any hint or inkling know, of that strange innocence or sin, which locked itself so close within. The doors recessed in massy walls, and far apart as dingy, were as Bastille gates. No shape astir except at whiles a shadow falls athwart the way, and key in hand, noiseless applies it, enters so, and vanishes. By dry airs fanned, the languid hyssop waveth slow, dusty on stones by ruin rent. 'Twould seem indeed the accomplishment, whereof the greater prophet tells in truce forecasting canticles, where voice of bridegroom, groom, and bride is hushed, each silent wall and lane, the city's towers in barren pride, which still a stifling air detain, so irked him with his burden fraught. Timely the Jaffa gate he sought, then issued, and at venture went, along a vague and houseless road, save narrow houses where abode the Turk in man's last tenement, unearthed, but them he heeded not. Such trance his reveries begot. Christ lived a Jew, and in Judea may linger any breath of him? If nay, yet surely it is here, one best may learn if all be dim. Suddenly it came in random play, here to Emmaus, is the way. And Luke's narration straight recurred how the two falterers' hearts were stirred, meeting the arisen, then unknown, and listening to his lucid word, as here in place they traveled on. That scene in Clarel's temper bred a novel sympathy, which said, I too, could I but meet some stranger of a lore replete, who marking how my looks betray the dumb thoughts clogging here my feet, would question me, expound and prove, and make my heart to burn with love. Emmaus were no dream today. He lifts his eyes and outlined there, saw as an answer to the prayer, a man who silent came and slow, just over the intervening brow of a nigh slope. Nearer he drew, revealed against clear skies of blue. And in that Syrian air of charm, he seemed illusion such was given, emerging from the level heaven, and vested with its liquid calm. Scarce aged like time's wrinkled suns, but touched by chastenings of eld, which halloweth life's simpler ones. In wasted strength he seemed upheld, invisibly by faith serene. Paul's evidence of things not seen. No staff he carried, but one hand, a solitary book retained. Meeting the students, his mild eyes, fair greeting gave in faint surprise, but noting that untranquil face, concern and anxiousness found place beyond the occasion and surmise. Young friend in Christ, what thoughts molest that here ye droop so? Wanderest without a guide where guide should be. Receive one, friend, the book take ye. From man to book in startled way, the youth his eyes bent, book how gray and weather-stained in woeful plight, much like that scroll left bare to blight. Which poet pale, when hope was low, bade one who into Libya went, fling to the wasteful element. Yes, leave it there, let wither so. Ere Clarel ventured on reply, anew the stranger proffered it, and in such mode he might espy it was the page of Holy Writ. Then unto him drew Clarel nigher, thou art the sinner Nehemiah. Canto 8, The Votary. Sinner, so spake the saint, a man, long tarrying in Jury's court. With him the faith so well could sort. His home he'd left, nor turned again. His home by Narragansett's marge, giving those years on death which verge fondly to that enthusiastic part, off coming of a stricken heart, unselfish, which finds solace so, though none in sooth might hope to know, and few surmise his forepast bane. Such needs have been since seldom yet lone liver was or wanderer met, except he closeted some pain or memory thereof, but thence, may be, was given him deeper sense, or all that travail life can lend, which man may scarce articulate, better than herds which share. What end? How hope? Turn whither? Where was gate for expectation save the one of beryl, pointed by St. John? That gate would open, yea, and Christ thence issue, come unto his own, and earth be re-imparadised. Passages, presages, he knew. Zion restore, convert the Jew. Reseat him here, the waste bedew. Then Christ returneth, so it ran. No founded mission chartered him. Single in person as in plan, absorbed he ranged in method dim, a flitting tract dispensing man. Tracks in each text scribe ever proved, in east which he of Tarsus roved. Though well such heart might sainthood claim, unjust alloy to reverence came, in Smyrna's mart, sojourning there, waiting a ship for Joppa's stair. Pestered he passed through Gentile throngs, teased by an eddying urchin host, his tracks all fluttering like tongues, the fire flakes of the Pentecost. Deep red he was in seers devout, the which forecast Christ's second prime, and on his slate would cipher out the mystic days and dates sublime, and times and half a time, Expound he could and more reveal, yet frequent would he feebly steal close to one's side, asking in way of weary age the hour of day. But how he lived and what is fair, ravens and angels few beside, dreamed or divined, his garments spare, true marvel seemed, nor unallied to clothes worn by that wandering band, which ranged and ranged the desert sand with Moses, and for 40 years, which 20 times reclad the seers in green and plumed the birds anew. One vesture wore, from home he brought the garb which still met sun and dew, ashen and shade by rustics wrought, Latin, Armenian, Greek, and Jew. Full well the harmless vagrant kenned the small meek face, the habit gray, and him they owned our human clay. The Turk went further, let him wend. Him Allah cares for, Holy One. A Santon held him, and was none. Bigot enough scorn shaft to sin, for say what cynic will or can, man sinless is revered by man through all the forms which creeds may lend. And so, secure nor pointed at, among brave turbans freely roamed the hat. Canto 9. Saint and Student. Nay, take it, friend in Christ, and held the book in proffer new, the while his absent eyes of dreamy eld some floating vision did beguile, of heaven perchance the wafted hymn, as if in place of earthly white, a haze of spirits met his sight, and Clarel were but one of them. Consult it, heart, wayfarer you, and this a friendly guide the best. No ground there is that faith would view, but here 'tis rendered with the rest. The way to fields of Beulah dear, and New Jerusalem is here. I know that guide, said Clarel, yes, and mused a while in bitterness, then turned and studied him again, doubting and marveling. A strain of trouble seemed the elder brow. A pilgrim art thou, pilgrim thou. Words simple, which in Clarel bred more than the simple saint divined, and thinking of vocation fled. Himself he asked, or do I rave, or have I left now far behind the student of the sacred lore? Direct he then this answer grave, I am a traveler, no more. Come then with me, and peace will go. These ways of Salem well I know. Me let me guide. Whose guide is this? And held the book in witness so, as 'twere a guide that could not miss. Heart, come with me, all times I roam, yea, everywhere my work I ply, in Salem's lanes, or down in gloom of narrow glens which outer lie. Ever I find some passer-by, but thee I'm sent to, share and rove, with me divide the scrip of love, despite the old man's shattered ray, won by his mystic saintly way, revering too his primal faith, and grateful for the human claim, and deeming he must know each path, and help him so in languid frame. The student gave assent, and caught dim solacement to previous thought. Canto 10. Rambles. Days fleet, they rove, the storied ground, tread many a sight that rues the ban, where serial wrecks on wrecks confound, era and monument and man, or rather in stratifying way, bed and impact and overlay. The hospitallers, cloister shamed, crumble in ruin, unreclaimed, unshivered, Fatimite, palaces reared upon crash of Herod's sway, in turn built on the Maccabees, and on King David's glory they, and David on antiquities of Jebusites and Ornan's floor, and hunters' camps of ages long before, so Glenroy's tears of beaches be, abandoned margins of the glacial sea. Amid that waste from joy debarred, how few the islets, fresh and green, yet on Moriah, tree and sward, in Allah's court's park, like were seen from roof nearby, below fierce ward being kept by Mauritanian guard of bigot blacks, but of the reign of Christ did no memento live, save soil and ruin negative, seemed yielded in that crumbling fane, erst gem to Baldwin's sacred fife, the chapel of our Dame of Grief, but hard by Ophil's winding base, well watered by the runnel lead, a spot they found not lacking grace, named Garden of King Solomon, though now a cauliflower bed, to serve the kitchens of the town. One day, as here they came from far, the saint repeated with low breath, Adonijah, Adonijah, the stumbling stone of Zoheleth. He wanders, Clarel thought, but no, for text and chapter did he show, narrating how the prince in glade, this very one the banquet made, the plotter's banquet long ago, even by the stone named Zoheleth, but startled by the trump that blew, proclaiming Solomon pale grew. With all his guests from lower glen, they slanted up the steep, and there attained a higher terrace din. O'er small and silent field quite bare, the mentor breathed, Come early here, a sign thou see. Clarel drew near. What sign, he asked. Whereto with sighs, abashed by morning's holy eyes, his field will crimson and for shame, struck by his fantasy and frame. Clarel regarded him for time, then noted the dull reddish soil and caught sight of a thing grime, whose aspect made him to recoil, a rotting charnel house, forlorn, midway in earth, caved in and torn, and Clarel knew, one scarce might err, the field of blood, the bad Al-Qadama. By Olivet in waning day, the saint in fond illusion went, dream mixed with legend and event, and as with reminiscence fraught, narrated in his rambling way, how here at eve was Christ's resort, the last low sheep bell tinkling lone, Christ and the dear disciple John, off by the golden gate that looks on Shevadown, and far across toward Bethany's secluded nooks, that gate which sculptures rare emboss, in arches twin, the same where rode Christ entering with secret load, same gate or on or near the site, when palms were spread to left and right, before him, and with sweet acclaim, were waved by damsels under sway of trees wherefrom those branches came. Over and under palms he went, unto that crown how different, the port walled up by Moslem hands, in dread of that predicted day, when pealing hymns armed Christian bands. So Islam's seers, despondent vouch, shall storm it wreathed in Mary's May, by that sealed gate, in languor slouch, how listless in the golden day. Clarel the mentor frequent heard, time for Christ's return allot. A dream, and like a dream it blurred, the sense faded and was forgot, moved by some mystic impulse, far from motive known or regular, the saint would thus his lore unfold, though inconclusive, yes, half told. The theme he'd leave, then nod, droop, doze, start up and prattle, sigh and close. Canto 11, Lorgehan. Well for the student might it last, this dreamful frame which Lethe bred. Events obtruded and it passed, for on a time the twain were led from Gehan's upper pool and glade down to the deeper gulf. They strayed along by many silent cells, cut in the rock, void citadels of death. In porch of one was seen a mat of tender turf, faint green, and quiet standing on that sword, a stranger whom they overheard low, murmuring, equivocal, wouldst thou the weary to thee tell, thou tomb so winsome in thy grace, to me no reassuring place? He saw them not, and they to shun disturbing him, passed and anon met three demoniacs, sad three, ranging those wasteful limits o'er, as in old time, that look they wore which in the moody mad bids flee. 'Tis what have I to do with thee? Two shunned approach, but one did sit, lost in some reminiscence sore of private wrong outrageous. He, as at the larger orb of it, looming through mists of mind, would bound or cease to pour upon the ground, as late and so be inly riven by arrows of indignant pain, convulsed in face, He glared at heaven, then lapsed in sullenness again. Dire thoughts the pilgrim's mind beset. And did Christ come in such a scene, encounter the poor, Gadarene long centuries ago, and yet behold, but here came in review. Though of their nearness unaware, the stranger downward wending there, who marking Clarel instant knew, at least so might his start declare, a brother that he well might own, in tie of spirit, young he was, with crescent forehead, but alas, a frame misshaped. Words spake him none, but vaguely hovered as may one, not first who would accost but deep, under reserve the wish may keep. Ere Clarel, here embarrassed groan, made recognition the unknown, compressed his lips, turned and was gone, mutely for moment, face met face. But more perchance between the two was interchanged than even may pass in many a worded interview. The student in his heart confessed a novel sympathy impressed, and late reminiscence to retrieve, fain the encounter would renew. And yet if off one's resolution be overruled by constitution, herein his heart he might deceive. Ere long retracing higher road, Clarel with Nehemiah stood by David's tower, without the wall, where black the embattled shadows fall. At morn over Hinnom, groups were there, come out to take the evening air, watching a young lord, Turk in pride, with fez and sash as red as coral, and on a steed whose well-groomed hide was all one burnished burning sorrel, scale the lit slope, then veering wide, rushed down into the gloomful gorge, the steel hoof showering sparks as from a forge. Even Nehemiah in senile tone of dreamy interest was one, that shooting star to gaze upon. But rallying, he bent his glance toward the opposing eminence, and turning, seest thou not, he said, as sinks the sun beyond this glen of Moloch, how clouds intervene and hood the brightness that was shed. But yet few hours, and he will rise in better place, and beauty get, yea, friend in Christ, in morning skies, return he will over Olivet, and we shall greet him, say ye so, betimes then will we up and go. Farewell at early dawn await, Christ's bondman old at Stephen's gate. Canto 12, Silio. But ere they meet in place assigned, it needs to make the sequel clear, a crossing thread be first entwined. Within the Terra Santa's wall, a prefix drop the Latins here, so the Franciscan convent call. Commended to the warden's care, the mitred father, warden there, by misses from a cardinal, it chanced an uncompanioned youth, by birth a Roman, shelter found, in casual contact, daily round. Mixed interest the stranger won, each friar, the humblest, could but own his punctual courtesy in sooth. Though this still guarded a reserve which not offending, heart estranged, sights and places all he ranged, unwearied, but would ever swerve from escort such as here finds place. Or cord-girt guide, or chamberlain, marshal in oriental town, by gilt globe staff of office known, sword by his side in golden lace, tall herald making clear the van. But what most irked each tonsured man, distrust begat, concern of heart, was this. Though the young man took part in chapel service, 'twas his guest, who but conformed, he showed no zest of faith within, faith personal. Ere long the warden, kindly all, said inly with himself, poor boy, enough hast thou of life annoy. Let be reproach, tied up in knot, of body by the fleshly withes. Needs must it be the spirit writhes, and takes a warp, but Christ will blot some records in the end, and own so far as in by out is shown, not idle was the monk's conceit. Fair head was set on crook and lump, Absalom's locks but Aesop's hump. Deep in the grave eyes his last retreat, One read through guarding faint of pride, quick sense of all the ills that gride in one contorted so, but here more to disclose and bearing chief, more than to monks might well appear, there needs some running mention brief. Fain had his brethren have him grace some civic honorable place, and interest was theirs to win ample preferment. He as kin was loved, if but ill understood. At heart they had his worldly good, but he postponed and went his way, unpledged, unhampered, so that still leading a studious life at will, and prompted by an earnest mind, scarce might he shun the fevered sway of focused question in our day. Overmuch he shared, but in that kind, which marks the Italian turn of thought, when counting Rome's tradition not, the mind is coy to own the rule of sect replacing sect or school. At sea in brig which swings no boat, to founder is to sink. On day when from St. Peter's balcony, the raised pontific fingers bless the city and the world, the stress he knew of fate. Blessest thou me. One wave here in this heaving sea of heads, how may a blessing be? Luckless from action's thrill removed, and all that yields our nature room. In courts a jest and harder doom, never the hunchback may be loved, never for Beatrice, Biche, oh, diminutive once sweet, made now all otherwise, didst thou but fool, arch practice in precocious school? Nay, rather, 'twas ere thou didst bud into thy riper womanhood. Since love, arms, courts, abjure, why then remaineth to me what? The pen? Dead feather of ethereal life, nor efficacious much, save when it makes some fallacy more rife. My kin, I blame them not at heart, would have me act some routine part, subserving family and dreams, alien to me elusive schemes. This world clean fails me, still I yearn, me then it surely does concern. Some other world to find, but where? In creed, I do not find it there. That said, and is the emprise over? Negation is there, nothing more. This side the dark and hollow bound. Lies there no unexplored rich ground, some other world? Well, there's the new, joyless and ironic too. They vouch that virgin spheres assign seat for man's recreated kind. Last hope and proffer they protest, brave things, sun rising in the west, and bearded centuries but gone, for ushers to the beardless one. Nay, nay, your future's too sublime. The past is half of time. The proven half, thou pantheon old, 2,000 years have round thee rolled. Yet thou in Rome, thou biddest me seek wisdom and something more antique than thou thyself. Turn then what seer, the senior of this Latian one, speaks from the ground transported here in eastern soil, far buried down for consecration and a grace, in locking Santa Croce's base, lies earth of Jewry, which of yore the homeward bound Crusaders bore, and fleet from Jaffa, Trajan's hall, that huge ellipse imperial, was built by Jews, and Titus's arch transmits their conqueror in march. Of trophies which those peers adorn, there yet for an historic plea, and heathen triumphs harlotry, the seven-branch candlestick is born. What then? They'll all be whim of mine, yet by these monuments I'm schooled, arrested, strangely overruled. Methinks I catch a beckoning sign, summons as from Palestine. Yea, let me view that pontiff land, whose sway a cult can so command, make even papal Rome to be her appanage or her colony. Is Judah's mummy quite unrolled to pluck the talisman from fold? But who may well indeed forecast the novel influence of scenes remote from his habitual past? The unexpected supervenes which Chelio proved 'neath Zion's lee, his nature with that nature blent, evoked an upstart element, as do the acid and the alkali. Canto 13, The Arch. Blue lights sent up by ship forlorn are answered off but by the glare of rockets from another torn in the same gale's inclusive snare. 'Twas then when Giglio was lanced by novel doubt the encounter chanced in Gihon, as recited late, and at a time when Clarel too, on his part, felt the grievous weight of those demoniacs in view, so that when Giglio advanced, no wonder that the meeting eyes betrayed reciprocal surmise, and interest was thereupon. The Italian, as the eve drew on, regained the gate and hurried in, as he would passionately win. Surceased to thought by rapid pace, eastward he bent, across the town, till in the Via Crucis lone, an object there arrested him, with gallery which years deface, its bulk athwart the alley grim, the arch named Ecce Homo through. The same, if childlike faith be true, from which the Lamb of God was shown by Pilate to the wolfish crew. And Giglio in frame, how prone to kindle at that scene recalled. Perturbed he stood, and heart enthralled. No raptures which with saints prevail, nor trouble of compunction born. He felt as there he seemed to scan, aloft in spectral guise, the pale still face, purple robe and thorn, and inly cried, Behold the man, yon man it is this burden lays, even he who in the pastoral hours, abroad in fields and cheered by flowers, announced to heaven's unclouded days, and awe with such persuasive lips, those lips now sealed while doom delays, won men to look for solace there, but crying out in death's eclipse, when rainbow none his eyes might see, enlarged the margin for despair. My God, forsaketh me? Upbraider, we upbraid again, then we upbraid, our pangs constrain. Pathos itself to cruelty, ere yet thy day no pledge was given, homes and mansions in the heaven. Paternal homes reserved for us, heart hoped it not, but lived content, content with life's own discontent. Nor deemed that fate ere swerved for us, the natural law men let prevail, then reason disallowed the state of instincts various with fate. But thou, see and rack how pale, who did the world with throes convulse, behold him, yea, behold the man who warranted, if not began, the dream that drags out its repulse, nor less some cannot break from thee, thy love so locked as with thy lore. They may not rend them and go free. The head rejects, so much the more. The heart embraces what? The love? If true what priests avouch of thee, the shark that madest yet claimest the dove, nature and thee in vain we search, well urged the Jews within the porch. How long wilt make us still to doubt? How long 'tis 18 cycles now, enigma and evasion grow, and shall we never find thee out? What isolation loans thy state, that all we else know cannot mate with what thou teachest nearing thee? All footing fails as history shows there's a gulf where bridge is none, in lapse of unrecorded time, just after the apostles' prime. What chance or craft might break it down? Serve this a purpose? By what art of conjuration might the heart of heavenly love so sweet, so good, corrupt into the creed's malign, begetting strife's pernicious brood, which claim for patron thee divine? Anew, for this thou bleedest, anguished face, yea, thou through ages to accrue, shalt the Medusa shield replace, in beauty and in terror too, shalt paralyze the nobler race, smite or suspend, perplex, deter, tortured shalt prove a torturer. Whatever ribald future be, thee shall these heed, amaze their hearts with thee, thy white, thy red, thy fairness, and thy tragedy. He turned, uptorn in inmost frame, nor weened he went the way he came, till meeting two there, nor in calm, a monk and layman, one in creed, the last with novice ardor warm, newcomer and devout indeed, to whom the other was the guide, and showed the places. Here, he cried, at pause before a wayside stone, thou markest the spot where that bad Jew his churlish taunt at Jesus threw, bowed under cross with stifled moan, caitiff, which for that cruel wrong thenceforth till doomsday drives along. Starting as here he made review, Gelio winced, am I the Jew? Without delay afresh he turns, descending by the way of thorns, winning the proto-martyr's gate, and goes out down Jehoshaphat. Beside him slid the shadows flung by evening from the tombstones tall, upon the bank far sloping from the wall. Scarce did he heed, or did but slight, the admonishment the warder rung, that with the setting of the sun, now getting low and all but run, the gate would close and for the night. Canto 14. In the Glen. If Sanarola's zeal devout, but with the faggots flame died out, if Leopardi stoned by grief, a young Saint Stephen of the doubt, might merit well the martyr's leaf. In these if passion held her claim, that Syrio pass of breed the same, nor ask from him, not found in them, the Attic calm or Saxon phlegm. Night glooming now in valley dead, the Italian turned, regained the gate, but found it closed, the warder fled, and strange hush of an eastern town, where life retreats with set of sun, before the riveted clamped wood, alone in outer dark he stood. A symbol is it, be it so, harbor remains, I'll thither go. A point there is where Kedron's shore, narrowing, deepening, steepening more, shrinks to an adamantine pass, flanked by 3 tombs from base to head, hewn from the cliff in cubic mass, one quite cut off and islanded, and one presents in Petra row, pillars and hanging portico, or balcony here looking down vacantly on the vacant glen, a place how dead, hard by a town. 'Twas here that Silio made his den, where erst as by tradition held, St. James from hunters lay concealed, Levites and bigots of the thong, hour after hour slow dragged along, the glen's wall with night round about, blended as cloud with cloud rack may, but lo, as when off Tamura, the splash of north lights on the sea, crimson the bergs. So here start out some crags aloft, how vividly, apace he one less narrow bound, from the high gate behold a stream of torches, lava like it wound, out from the city locked in dream, and red adown the valley flowed. Was it his friends the friars, from height, meet rescue bringing in that light? To one benighted, yes, they showed a file of monks, but how? Their wicks invest a shrouded crucifix, and each with flambeau held in hand, craped laymen mingle with the band of cord-girt gowns. He looks again. Yes, 'tis the Terra Santa's train. Nearer they come. The warden goes, and other faces Celio knows. Upon an office these are bound, consolatory, which may stem the affliction or relieve the wound of those which mute accompany them in mourner's garb. Aside he shrunk until had passed the rearmost monk. Then cloaked he, followed them in glade, where fell the shadow deeper made. Kedron they cross, much so might move. If legend hold, which none may prove, the remnant of the 12 which bore down through this glen in funeral plight, the mother of our Lord by night, to sepulchre, nay, just before her tomb allege, the monks and they which mourn, pause and uplift a lay, then rise, pass on, and bow the knee in dust beside Gethsemane. One named the bitter cup and said, Savior, thou knowest it was here the angels ministered thy head, so ported kiss thy lidded eyes, and pale swoon cheek till thou didst rise. Help these then unto these come near. Out sobbed the mourners, and the tear from Cilio trickled, but he mused, weak am I by myth abused. Up Olivet the torch, light train, filed slowly, yielding tribute strain. At every sacred place they won, not tarried long, but journeyed on. To Bethany, through stony lane, went down into the narrow house, or void cave named from Lazarus. The flambeaux redden the dark wall, their shadows on that redness fall. to make the attestation rife, the resurrection and the life. Through him the Lord of miracle, the warden from the page doth bruit. The story of the man that died and lived again, bound hand and foot. With grave clothes rose electrified, whom then they loose let go even he whom many people came to see, the village hinds and farmhouse maids, afterward at the supper given to Jesus in the balmy even, who raised him vital from the shades, the lesson over, while they sang, O death, where is thy sting? O grave, where is thy victory? It rang and ceased, and from the outward cave these tones were heard. But died he twice? He comes not back from paradise or Hades now. A vacant tomb by Golgotha they show, a cell, a void cell here. And is it well? Razor and rays divide one doom. Both vanished now, no thrills forewarn of fish that leaps from midnight tarn. The very wave from which it springs is startled and recoils and rings. So here was Cilio and the word, which from his own rash lips he heard. He hastening forth now all unseen, recrossed the mountain and ravine, nor paused till on a mound he sate, biding St. Stephen's opening gate. Ere long and gently fanning flaws, an odoriferous balmy air foreruns the morning, then withdraws, or westward heralding roves there. The startled east to tremor knows, flushes, anon superb appears, in state of housing shawls and spears, such as the Sultan's vanguard shows, proceeded thus in pomp the sun, august from Persia draweth on, waited by groups upon the wall of Judah's upland capital. Canto 15. Under the minaret. Low shoot the spikes above the hill. Now expectation grows and grows, yet vain the pageant, idle still. When one would get at nature's will to be put off by purfled shows, he breaks, behold, thou orb supreme, 'tis Olivet, which thou ascendest the hill in legendary chapel. Yet how indifferent thy beam! Awe nor reverence pretendest, dome and summit dost but dapple with gliding touch a tinging gleam. Knowest thou the Christ? Believest in the dream? 'Twas Cilio seated there as late upon the mound, but now the gate, flung open, welcomes in the day, and lets out Clarel with the guide. These from the wall had hailed the ray, and Cilio heard them there aside, and turning rose was it to greet. But ere they might accost or meet, from minaret and grounds hard by, of Omar the muezzin's cry. Tardy, for Mustafa was old, and age a laggard was rolled, announcing Islam's early hour of arisen along the walls, and that deep gulf over which these tower, far down toward Rogel, hark it calls. Can Siloa hear it, yet her wave so listless lap the hollow cave? Is Zion deaf, but promptly still, each turban at that summons shrill, which should have called ere perfect light, bowed hands on chest or arms upright, while over all those fields of loss, where now the crescent rides the cross, soul at the marble masthead stands, the Islam herald his two hands upon the rail and sightless eyes, turned upward reverent toward the skies, and none who share not this defect, the rules to function here elect, since raised upon the lifted perch, what leave for prying eyes to search into the privacies that lurk in courts domestic of the Turk, whose tenements in every town guard well against the street alone. But what's evoked in Clarel's mind, what look, responsive look is seen in Cilio as together there they pause? Can these a climax share? Mutual and approach may glide, minds which from poles adverse have come, belief and unbelief, may doom of doubt make such to coincide, upon one frontier brought to dwell, arrested by the Izan, high in summons as from out the sky, to matins of the infidel. The God alleged herein abode, ignored with such impunity, scarce true is writ a jealous God. Think ye such thoughts? If so it be, yet these may eyes transmit and give, Mere eyes, so quick, so sensitive, howbeit Cilio knew his mate. Again as down in Gihon late, he hovered with his overture, an overture that scorned debate, but inexperienced, shy, unsure, challenged, abrupt, or yea or nay, again did Clarel hesitate, when quick the proud one with a look, which might recoil of heart betray, and which the other scarce might brook, and recollection turned away, ah, student, ill thy sort have sped, the instant proffer it is fled, when some days after for redress, repentant Clarel sought access. He learned the name with this alone, from convent Cilio was gone, nor knew thy whither. Herein pressed Clarel came a dreamy token. What speck is that so far away, that wanes and waxing day? Is it the sail ye fain had spoken, last night when surges parted ye? But on it is a boundless sea. Canto 16, The Wall of Wail. Beneath the toppled ruins old and Ceres from Moriah rolled, slips Kedron furtive. Underground, peasants avouch they hear the sound, in aisled lagoons and watery halls. Under the temple silent sleep, what memories elder, far and deep, what ducts and chambered wells and walls, and many deep substructions be, which so with doubt and gloom agree, to question one is borne along, base these the right, subserve the wrong, 'twas by an all forgotten way, whose mouth an outer glen forbid, by heaps of rubbish long lay hid, cloaca of remotest day, 'twas by that unsuspected vault, with outlet in mid-city lone, a spot with ruin all bestrown, peasants in sedition late, captured Jerusalem in strait, took it by underground assault, go wander and within the walls among the glades of cactus trees, where no life harbors, peers or calls, wild solitudes like shoals and seas, unsailed or list at still sundown, list to the handmills as they drone, domestic handmills in the court, and groups there in the dear resort. Mild matron pensive by her son, the little prattler at her knee, under such scenes abysses be, dark quarries where few care to pry, whence came those many cities high, great capitals successive reared, and which successive disappeared. On this same site, to powder ground, dispersed their dust blows round and round. No shallow gloss may much avail, when these or kindred thoughts assail, which Clarel proved the more he went, a rover in their element, for trusting still that in some place where pilgrims linger he anew the missing stranger yet would face, and speak with never, he withdrew his wandering feet in aimless sort, passing across the town a mort. They came where camped in corner waste, some Edomites were at repast, sojourners mere and of a day, dark-hued nor unlike birds of prey, which on the stones of Tyre alight, while Clarel fed upon that sight, the saint repeating in his ear, meet text applying to the scene, as liberated from ravine, voices in choral note they hear, and strange as lilies in morass, at the same moment low appear, emerging from a stony pass. A lane low vaulted and unclean, damsels in linen robes, heads bare, and linked with matrons pacing there, and elders gray, the maids with book, companions would one page overlook, and vocal thus they wound along, no glad procession spite the song, for truth to own, so downcast they, at least the men in sordid dress, and double file, the slim array, but for the maiden's gentleness, and voiceless, which so bird-like sang, had seemed much like a coffle gang. But Nehemiah key supplied, alas, poor misled Jews, he sighed, ye do but dirge among your dead, the Hebrew quarter here we tread, and this is Friday, wailing day, those to the temple wend their way, and shall we follow, doing so, they came upon a sunken yard, obscure where dust and rubbish blow, felonious place, and quite debarred from common travel on one side, a blind wall rose, stable and great, Massed up immense and Ararat, founded on beveled blocks how wide, reputed each a stone august, of Solomon's fane, else fallen to dust, but now adopted for the wall to Islam's court. Their lord of all, the Turk permits the tribes to creep, abject in rear of those dumb stones, to lean or kneel, lament and weep. Sad mendicants shut out from gate, inexorable sighs and groans. To be restored, we wait, long wait. They call to count their pristine state on this same ground, and lifted rows of peristyles, the porticos, crown upon crown, where Levite trains and chimes of many a silver bell, daintily small as pearls and chain, hemming their mantles musical, passed in procession up and down, viewing the bout of guarding heights and march of shadows there and flights of pigeon pets and palm leaves blown, or heard the silver trumpets call the priestly trumps to festival. So happy they, such Judah's prime, but we, the remnant, lo, we pale. Cast from the temple, here we wail, yea, perish ere come Shiloh's time, hard by that joyless crew which linked with brows against the adamant, sad buttresses thereto. Hard by, the student marks the black Jew bowed. His voice he hears amid the crowd, which supplicates stern Shaddai, and earnest too he seeth there, one scarcely Hebrew in his dress, rural and hard cheeks his swarthiness, with nothing of an Eastern air. His eyes met Clarel's unremoved. In end a countryman he proved, a strange apostate on the twain, contrasted so, the white, the black man's earliest breed and latest strain, behind the master Moslem's back, skulking and in great Moses' track. Gaze Clarel with the wonderment of white who feels the earth upheave beneath him and learns ill content that terra firma can deceive. When now those Friday wails were done, Nehemiah sidling with his book unto a lorn decrepit one, proffered a tract. 'Tis Hebrew, look. Zealous he urged, it points the way, sole way, dear heart, whereby ye may rebuild the temple. Answer none, gat he from Isaac's pauper son, who turning part as in disdain, crept toward his squalid home again. Enwrapped stood Clarel, lost awhile. Yon Jew has faith, can faith be vain? But is it faith? I face the word. What else? Faith then can thus beguile her faithfulness. Hard, that is hard. So doubts invaded, found him out. He strove with them, but they proved stout. Nor would they down, but turn regard. Among the maids those rites detained, one he perceived as it befell, whose air expressed such truth unfeigned, and harmonies inlinked which dwell, in pledges born of record pure. She looked a legate to ensure that paradise is possible, now as hereafter. 'Twas the grace of nature's dawn and Eve-like face, and nereid eyes with virgin spell, candid as day, yet baffling quite, like day through unreserve of light. A dove she seemed, a temple dove, born in the temple or its grove, and nurtured there, but deeper viewed. What was it that looked part amiss, a bit impaired? What lack of peace, enforced suppression of a mood, regret with yearning intertwined, and secret protest of a virgin mind? Hebrew the profile, every line, but as in haven fringed with palm, which Indian reefs and bay from harm, belulled as in the vase, the wine, red-budded corals and remove, peep coy through quietudes above, so through clear olive of the skin, and features finely hagarine, its way a telltale flush did win, a tint which unto Israel's sand blabbed of the June in some far clover land. Anon by chance the damsel's eye fell on Nehemiah, and the look of friendly recognition spoke, returned in kind, when by and by the groups break up and homeward bent. Then nor unnoted by the youth, that maiden with the apostate went, whose voice paternal called her Ruth. Tell, friend, said Clarel eagerly, as from the wall of wail they passed, father and daughter, who may be that strange pervert? No willing haste the mentor showed, a while he fed on anxious thoughts, then grievingly, The story gave a tangled thread, which cleared from snarl and ordered so, follows transferred with inner flow, of much Nehemiah scarce might add. Canto 17, Nathan. Nathan had sprung from worthy stock, austere, ascetical, but free, which hewed their way from sea-beat rock, wherever woods in winter be. The pilgrim keel, in storm and stress, had erred in on a wilderness. But shall the children all be schooled by hap which their forefathers ruled, those primal settlers put in train, new immigrants which inland bore, from these two immigrants again westward pressed, further, more bread more, at each remove a goodlier wain, a heart more large, an ampler shore, with legacies of farms behind, until in years the wagons wind through parks and pastures of the sun, warm plains as of Esdraelon. 'Tis nature in her best benign, wild in symmetry of mold, with freckles on her tawny gold, the lily alone looks pantherine. The livered lily never broods the gloom here of grim hemlock woods, breeding the witcher raft, spell malign, but groves like isles in Grecian seas, those dotting isles, the Sporades. But who the gracious charm may tell, long rollings of the vast serene, the prairie in her swimming swell of undulation, such glad scene was won by venturers from far, born under that severer star. The landing patriarchs knew, in fine, to Illinois a turf divine, of promise how auspicious spread, ere yet the cities rose thereon. From Sacco's mountain wilds were led, the sire of Nathan, wife and son, life's lot to temper so and shun, mountains whose camp withdrawn was set, above one vale he would forget. After some years their tale had told, he rested, lay forever stilled, with sachems and mound builders old. The son was grown, the farm he tilled, stripling but of manful ways, hardy and frugal, oft he filled the widow's eyes with tears of praise. An only child with her he kept, for her sake part the Christian way, though frequent in his bosom crept, precocious doubt unbid the sway. He felt of his grave life and power, a vast space from the log house door, daily beheld thrice Indian mounds, against the horizon's level bounds, dim showed across the prairie green, like dwarfed and blunted mimic shapes of pyramids at distance seen. From the broad delta's planted capes of vernal grain in nearer view, with trees he saw them crowned, which drew from the red sagamores of eld, entombed within the vital gum, which green kept each mausoleum. Hard by, as chance, he once beheld bones like sea corals, one bleached skull, a vase vine round and beautiful with flowers felt with bated breath, the floral revelry over death, and other sights his heart had thrilled. Lambs had he known by thunder killed, innocence in the type of Christ betrayed, had not such things sufficed to touch the young pure heart with awe. Memories meant could move him more in prairie twilight, summer's own, the last cow milked, and he alone. In barnyard dreamy by the fence, contrasted came a scene immense. The great white hills, mount flanked by mount, the Saco and Ammonoosuc's fount, where in September's equinox nature hath put such terror on, that from his mother man would run. Our mother earth the founded rocks unstable prove, the slide, again he saw the mountain side, sliced open, yet again he stood under its shadow on the spot, now waste, but once a cultured plot, though far from village neighborhood, where nor by sexton here said at even, somewhere his uncle slept no mound, since not a trace of him was found. So whelmed the havoc from the heaven, this reminiscence of dismay. These thoughts unhinged him on a day, waiting for monthly grist at mill, in settlement some miles away. It chanced upon the window sill a dusty book he spied, whose coat, like the Scotch miller's powdered twill, the mealy owner might denote. called off from reading unaware, the miller even had left it there, a book all but forsaken now, for more advanced ones not so frank, nor less in vogue and taking rank, and yet it never shall grow that infamy at first incurred, though viewed in light which moderns know capricious infamy absurd, the blunt straightforward Saxon tone, workaday language even his own, the sturdy thought not deep but clear, the hearty unbelief sincere, arrested him much like a hand clapped on the shoulder. Here he found body to doubt, rough standing ground. After some pages brief were scanned, wilt loan me this? He anxious said. The shrewd Scot turned his square strong head. The book he saw in troubled trim, fearing for Nathan even him, so strong and for the mill may be, should his unspoken heresy get brooded so, the lad but part might penetrate that senior heart. Vainly the miller would dissuade, pledge gave he, and the loan was made. Reclined that night by candle dim, he read then slept, and woke afraid, the white-hilled slide, the Indian skull, but this wore off, and unto him came acquiescence, which though dull was hardly peace and altered earth. Sudden he tilled an Adam's frame when thrust from Eden out to dearth, blessed no more and wise in shame the fall, nor aught availed at need to Nathan, not each filial deed done for his mother to allay this ill, but though the deist sway, broad as the prairie fire, consumed some pansies which before had bloomed, within his heart it did but feed to clear the soil for upstart weed. Yes, ere long came replacing mood, the god expelled from given form, went out into the calm and storm, now plowing near the isles of wood. In dream he felt the loneness come, in dream regarded there the loam, turned first by him such mental food, need quicken and in natural way, each germ of pantheistic sway, whose influence nor always drear, tenants our maiden hemisphere, as if dislodged long since from cells of Thracian woodlands hither stalk, hither to renew their old control, Pan and the pagan oracles. How frequent when Favonius, lo, breathed from the copse which mild did wave over his father's sylvan grave, and stirred the corn, he stayed the hoe, and leaning, listening, felt a thrill which heathenized against the will. Years sped, but years attain not truth, nor length of life avails at all, but time instead contributes Ruth. His mother heard the garners call, when sicklemen with sickles go, the churl of nature reaps her low. Let now the breasts of Ceres swell, and chooks with golden tassels gay, the Indian corn its trophies ray, about the log house is it well with death's ripe harvest. To believe, belief to win nor more to grieve, but how a sect about him stood in thin and scattered neighborhood, uncanny and in rupture new, nor were all lives of members true and good for them who hate and heave contempt on right and creed sublime, yet to their own rank fable cleave, abject the latest shame of time. These quite repelled, for still his mind erring was of no vulgar kind, alone and at doubt's freezing pole he wrestled with the pristine forms, like the first man, by inner storms, held in solution, so his soul ripened for hour of such control, as shapes concretes, the influence came, and from a source that well might claim surprise. 'Twas in a Lakeport new, a mart for grain, by chance he met a Jewess who about him threw else than Nerea's amorous net, and dubious while 'twas Miriam's race. A Sibyl breathed in Agar's grace, a Sibyl but a woman too. He felt her grateful as the rains to Rephaim and the Rama plains, and draught ere one herself did woo. Wilt join my people? Love is power. Came the strange plea in yielding hour, nay, and turn Hebrew, but why not? If backward still the inquirer goes to get behind man's present lot of crumbling faith for rearward shows, far behind Rome and Luther, what? The crag of Sinai, here then plant thyself secure 'tis adamant. Still as she dwelt on Zion's story, he felt the glamour, caught the gleam. All things but these seemed transitory. Love and his love's Jerusalem, and interest in a mitred race, with all which to the fame belongs. These in receptive heart found place when Agar chanted David's songs. 'Twas passion, but the Puritan mixed latent in his blood, a strain how evident of Hebrew source. 'Twas that diverted herein force, which biased hardly might do less. Here to append how earnestness, which disbelief for first fruits bore, now in recoil by natural stress, constrained to faith and more than prior disbelief had spurned, as if when he toward credence turned, distance therefrom but gave career, for impetus that shot him sheer beyond. Agar rejoiced nor knew how such a nature charged with zeal might yet overpass that limit due, observed by her, for woe or weal. They wedded one in heart and creed, transferring fields with title deed. From rustic life he quite withdrew, traded and throve. 2 children came, sedate his heart nor sad the dame, but years severed or he outgrew, while yet confirmed in all the myth, the mind infertile of the Jew, his northern nature full of pith, vigor and enterprise and will. Having taken thus the Hebrew bent, might not abide inactive so, and but the empty forms fulfill, needs utilize the mystic glow, for nervous energies find vent. The Hebrew seers announce in time the return of Judah to her prime. Some Christians deemed it then at hand. Here was an object up and due, with seed and tillage help renew, help reinstate the Holy Land. Some zealous Jews on alien soil, who still from Gentile ways recoil, and loyally maintain the dream, salute upon the Paschal day, with next year in Jerusalem. Now Nathan turning unto her, greeting his wife at morning ray, those words breathed on the Passover, but she who mutely startled lay, in the old phrase found import new, in the blithe tone a bitter cheer that did the very speech subdue. She kenned her husband's mind austere, had watched his reveries grave. He meant no flourish mere of sentiment. Then what to do, or how to stay? Decry it, that would faith unsay. Withstand him, but she gently loved, and so with Agar here it proved, as oft it may, the hearty will overpowered the deep monition still. Enough fair fields and household charms, they quit, sell all and cross the main, with Ruth and a young child in arms, a tract secured on Sharon's plain. Some sheds he built, and round-walled in defensive toil, severe but vain. The wandering Arabs wanted long, nor crime they deemed it, crime nor sin, to scale the desert convent strong. In sly foray leaped Nathan's fence, and robbed him, and no recompense attainable where law was none, or perjured resolute hereon. Agar with Ruth and the young child, he lodged within the stronghold town of Zion, and his heart exiled, to abide the worst in Sharon's Leah. Himself and honest servants 3, armed husbandmen, became as erst his sires in Pequod. Wilds immersed, Hittites, foes pestilent to God, his fathers old those Indians deemed, Nathan the Arabs here esteemed, the same, slaves meriting the rod, and out he spake it which bred hate, the more imperiling his state. With muskets now his servants slept, alternate watch and ward they kept, in grounds beleaguered not the less. Visits at stated times he made to them in Zion's walled recess. Agar with sobs the suppliants prayed that he would fix there. Ah, for good, tarry, abide with us, thine own. Put not these blanks between us, should such space be for a shadow thrown. Quit Sharon, husband, leave to brood, serve God by cleaving to thy wife, thy children, if come fatal strife, which I forebode, nay, and she flung her arms about him there and clung. She pled, but though his heart could feel, 'twas mastered by inveterate zeal, even the nursling's death ere long, balked not his purpose, though it wrung. But time the cruel whose smooth way is feline, patient for the prey, that to this twig of being clings, and fate which from her ambush springs, and drags the loiterer soon or late unto a sequel unforeseen. These doomed him and cut short his date. But first was modified the lien the husband had on Agar's heart, and next to prudence slid athwart. After distrust, but be unsaid, that steep toward which the current led, events shall speak, and now the guide, who did in sketch this tale begin, parted with Clarel at the end, and ere along came the eventide. Canto 18, Night. Like sails convened when calms delay off the twin forelands on fair day, so on Damascus' plain, behold, mid groves and gardens girdling ones, white fleets of sprinkled villas rolled in the green ocean of her environs. There, when no minaret receives the sun that gilds yet Saint Sophia, which loathe and later it bereaves, the peace fulfills the heart's desire in orchards mellowed by eve's ray, the prophet's son in turban green, mild with a patriarchal mien, gathers his fruity spoil in play of hide and seek where alleys be. The branching Eden brooks ye see, peeping and fresh as on the day when haply Abram's steward went, mild Eliezer musing, say, by those same banks to join the tent in Canaan pitched, from Herman stray, cool airs that in a dream of snows temper the ardor of the rose, while yet to moderate and reach a tone beyond our human speech. How steals from cloisters of the groves the ave of the vesper doves, such notes translated into hues, thy wall angelico suffuse, whose tender pigments melt from view, die down, die out, as sunsets do, but rustling trees aloft entice to many a house top, old and young, aerial people, see them throng, and the moon comes up from paradise. But in Jerusalem, not there, loungers at eve to roof repair, so frequent, haply 2 or 3, small quiet groups far off you see, or some all uncompanioned one, like shipboy at masthead alone, watching the star rise silently, so Clarel stands, his vaulted room opening upon a terrace free, lifted above each minor dome on grade beneath, glides away the twilight of the wailing day, the apostate's story fresh in mind, fain Clarel here had mused thereon, but more upon Ruth's lots so twined with clinging ill, but every thought of Ruth was strangely underrun by Celio's image. Celio sought, vainly in body, now appeared as in the spiritual part, haunting the air and in the heart, back to his chamber. Clarel veered, seeking that alms which unrest craves, of slumber alms withheld from him, for midnight rending all her graves, showed in a vision far and dim, still Celio and in pallid stress, fainting amid contending press of shadowy fiends and cherubim. Later anew he sought the roof and started, for not far aloof he caught some dubious object dark, huddled and hooded, bowed and set under the breast-high parapet, and glimmering with a dusky spark. It moved, it murmured in deep prayer. 'Twas Abdon under Talith rare, that scarf of supplication old, of India stuff with braid of gold. In cipher did the black Jew keep the saying, prayer is more than sleep. Islam says that the Hebrew rose, and kindled by the starry sky, embroidered text that mystic flows, the Talith gleams divested then. He turned not knowing Clarel nigh, and would have passed him all unseen. But Clarel spake, it roused annoy. An Eastern Jew in rapt employ, spied by the Gentile but a word, dispelled distrust, goodwill restored. Stay with me, Clarel said, go not. A shadow, but I scarce know what. It haunts me. Is it presage? Hark! That piercing cry from out the dark. 'Tis for some parted spirit, gone, just gone, the custom of the town. That cry is, yea, the watcher's breath, instant upon the stroke of death. Anew, 'tis like a tongue of flame, shot from the fissure and stood still. Can fate the boding thus fulfill? First ever I, first to disclaim such premonitions. Thrill us yet, I 'tis over, but we might have met. Hark, hark, again the cry is sped. For him it is found now, nay fled. Canto 19, The Fulfillment. Such passion, but have hearts forgot, that ties may form where words be not. The spiritual sympathy transcends the social, which appears in that presentiment may be of Clarel's inquietude of fears prove just. Yes, some retreat to win, even more secluded than the court, the Terra Santa locks within. Celio had found withdrawn resort and lodging in the deeper town. There, by a gasping ill distress such as attacks the hump-bowed one, after 3 days the malady pressed, he knew it, knew his course was run, and turning toward the wall found rest. 'Twas Syrians watched the parting hour, and Syrian women shrilled the cry that wailed it. This with added store learned Clarel, putting all else by to get at items of the dead, nor in the throb that casts out fear, aught recked he of a scruple here, but finding leaves that might be stead. The jotted journaled thoughts he read, a second self therein he found, but stronger with the heart to brave all questions on that primal ground, laid bare by faith's receding wave, but lo, arrested in event. Hurried down Hades' steep descent, cut off while in progressive stage, perchance ere years might more unfold, who young dies, leaves life's tale half told, how then is death the book's fly page? Is no hereafter, if there be, death foots what record, how forestalls acquaintance in eternity, advance to, and through age on age, here the tree lies not as it falls, for howsoever in words of man, the word and will of God be feigned, no incompletions heaven ordained, Clarel through him these reveries ran. Canto 20, Vale of Ashes. Beyond the city's thin resort, and northward from the Ephraim port, the Vale of Ashes keepeth place, if stream it have which showeth face. Thence Kedron issues when in flood, a pathless dell men seldom trace, the same which after many a rood down deepens by the city wall into a glen, where, if we deem Joel's wild text no runic dream, an archangelic trump shall call the nations of the dead from wreck, convene them in one judgment hall, the hollow of Melchizedek. That upper glade by quarries old reserves for weary ones a seat, porches of caves, stone benches cold, grateful and sultry climb to meet. To this secluded spot austere, priests Bork Talmudic records treat, the ashes from the altar here, they laid them, hallowed and released, shielded from winds in glade of peace. From falling the bier to end, hitherward now see Clarel tend a dell remote from Celio's mound, as he for time would shun the ground, so freshly opened for the dead, nor linger there while aliens stray, and ceremonious gloom is shed. Withdrawing to this quiet bay, he felt a natural influence glide in lenitive through every vein, and reached the heart, lull heart and brain. The comrade old was by his side, and solace shared, but this would pass, or dim eclipse would still thereon, as over autumn's hillside grass, the cloud howbeit in freak anon. His Bible he would muttering con, then turn and brighten with a start. I hear them in my heart. Yea, friend in Christ, I hear them swell, the trumpets of Emmanuel. Illusion, but in other hour, when oft he would foretell the flower, and sweets that time should yet bring in, a happy world with peace for dower, this more of interest could win, for he the solitary man who such a social dream could fan, what had he known himself of bliss? And nearing now his earthly end, even that he pledged he needs must miss. Clarel now such musings lend a vague disturbance as they wend, returning through the noiseless glade, but in the gate Nehemiah said, my room and court is pleasant, see, not yet you've been, there come with me. Canto 21, By Places. On Salem's surface undermined, low present alley lane or win, obscure which pilgrims seldom gain, or tread who wanted guides retain. Humble the pilot's native there, following humbly need ye fare. Afoot, for never camels pass, camels which elsewhere in the town stalk through the street and brush the gown, nor steed nor mule nor smaller ass. Some bypass flanked by wall and wall, affect like glens dismantled torn, Disastrous houses ripe for fall, haggard as Horeb or the rock, the named hermit antler of Cape Horn, shelter in chamber, grimed or hall, the bearded goat, herd's bearded flock, or quite abandoned, sold to fear, yawn and like plundered tombs appear. Here, if alone strive all ye can, needs must ye start at meeting man. Yet man here harbors, even he harbors like lizard in dry well, or stowaway in hull at sea, down by the keelson criminal, or penitent or wretch undone, or anchorite or kinless one, or wight cast off by kin or soul, which anguish from the hunter stole, like Yemin Bey, the Mameluke. He armed and happily mounted well, leaped the inhuman citadel. In Cairo fled ye, bleeding broke, through shouting lanes his breathless way, into the desert nor at bay. Even there might stand, but fox-like, on, and ran to earth in Zion's town. Here maimed, disfigured, crouched in den, and crouching died securest then. With these be hearts in each degree of craze whereto some creed is key, which mastered by the awful myth, find here on native soil the pith, and leaving a shrewd world behind, to trances open-eyed resigned, as visionaries of the word, walk like somnambulists abroad. Canto 22, Hermitage. Through such retreats of dubious inn, behold the saint and student wend, stirring the dust that here may keep, like that on mummies long asleep. In Theban tomb, those alleys past, a little square they win. A waste, shut in by towers so, hushed so blind, so tenantless and left forlorn, as seemed an ill surmise was born of something prowling there behind. An arch with key, stone slipped half down, like a dropped jaw they enter that, repulsed nor welcome, in the gate, climbed an upper chamber one, it looked out through low window small. On other courts of bale shut in, whose languishment of crumbling wall breathed that despair, alleged of sin, prediction and fulfillment met, in faint appealings from the rod, wherefore forever dost forget, for so long time forsake, O God. But Clarel turned him, heedful more, to note the place within, the floor, rudely was tiled, and little there a human harbor might express, save a poor chest, a couch, chair, a hermitage how comfortless. The beams of the low ceiling bare, were wreck stuff from the Joppa strand, scant the live timber in that land. Upon the cot the host sat down, short breathing with late travel spent, and wiping beads from brow and crown, essayed a smile and kindness meant. But now little foot was heard, light coming on the hush it fell, like tinkling of the camel bell in Uz. Hark, yea, she comes, my bird, cried Nehemiah, who hailed the hap. Yea, friend in Christ, quick now you'll see, God's messenger with feedeth me. And rising to the expected tap, he opened the door, alone was seen Ruth with a napkin, coarse yet clean, folding a loaf, therewith she bore a water pitcher, nothing more. These alms, the snowy robe and free, the veil which hid each tress from sight, might indicate a vestal white of priestess of sweet charity. The voice was on the lip, but eyes arrested in their frank accost, checked speech, and looked in opening skies upon the stranger, said the host, easing her hands, bird, bird, come in, while doing never was a sin. God bless thee, in suffusion dim, his eyes filled, she eluding him, retreated, what and flown, breathed he, daily this raven comes to me, but what should make it now so why? The hermit motioned here to share the loaf with Clarel, who put by the proffer, so with Crusoe air of castaway on isle and sea withdrawn, he broke the unshared bread, but not before a blessing said, loaf in left hand, the right hand raised, higher in eyes which heavenward gazed. Ere long, reflection done, the youth lured him to talk of things in range, linking themselves at last with Ruth, her sire he spake of, here 'twas strange, however the enthusiastic stole a change, a meek superior look in sooth. Poor Nathan did man ever stray, as thou to Judaize today, to deem the crook of Christ shall yield to Aaron's staff till thy field. in hope that harvest time shall see Solomon's hook in golden glee, reaping the ears. Well, well, meseems, heaven help him, dreams but dreams, dreams drear, but thou too, with face sincere, surely believest in Jew restored, yea, as forerunner of our Lord. Poor man, he's weak, 'tis even here, touching his forehead, he's amiss. Clarel scarce found reply to this, conjecturing that Nathan too must needs hold Nehemiah in view. The same, the which, an after day, confirmed by proof, but now from sway of thoughts he would not have recur, he slid and into dream of her, who late within that cell shed light, like the angel succorer by night. Of Peter dungeoned, but apace, he turned him, for he heard the breath, the old man's breath in sleep, the face, though trance struck, not like trance of death, all rigid, not a mask like that, iced over, which none may penetrate, conjecturing of aught below. Death freezes, but sleep thaws, and so the inmate lay, some lines revealed, effaced when life from sleep comes back, and what their import be it sealed. But Clarel felt as in affright, did Eliphaz the Temanite, when past the vision ere it spake, he stole forth, striving with his thought, leaving Nehemiah in slumber caught, alone and in an unlocked room, safe as a stone and vacant tomb. Stone none molest, for it is not. Canto 23, the close. Next day the wanderer drawing near, saluting with his humble cheer, made Clarel start, where now the look that face but late in slumber took. Had he but dreamed it, it was gone. But other thoughts were stirring soon, to such good purpose that the saint, through promptings scarce by him divined, anew led Clarel through constraint of inner byways yet inclined, away from his peculiar haunt, and came upon a little close, one wall whereof a creeper one, on casement sills small pots and rows, showed herb and flower, the shade and sun. Surprise how blessed in town but sere. Owl breathed the guide, they harbor here Agar and my young raven Ruth. And see, there's Nathan, nothing loath, just in from Sharon, 'tis his day. And yes, the rabbi in delay. The group showed just within the door, swung open where the creeper led, in lap the petting mother bore, the half-reclining maiden's head, the stool drawn neighboring the chair, in front erect the father there, hollow in cheek but rugged brown, Sharon's red soil upon his shoon, with zealot gesture urged some plea, which brought small joy to Agar's eyes, whereto turned Ruth's and scrutiny, impassive, wrinkled, and how wise, if wisdom be but craft profound. Sat the hoar rabbi, this his disguise, in plaits a headdress, a gait bound, a sable robe with mystic hem, clasped silver, locked in monogram, an unextinguished lamp they view, whose flame scarce visibly did sway, which having burned till morning dew, might not be quenched on Saturday, the unaltered Sabbath of the Jew, struck by the attitudes, the scene, and lo, the stranger to advance, obtrusive coming so between, while in emotion new and strange, Ruth thrilled him with life's first romance. Clarel abashed and faltering stood, with cheek that knew a novel change, but Nehemiah with air subdued, made known their presence, and Ruth turned, and Agar also, and discerned the stranger and a settled place. Matron and maid with welcome graced, both visitors, and seemed to find, in travel talk which here ensued, relief to burdens of the mind, but by the sage was Clarel viewed, with stony and unfriendly look, fixed inquisition hard to brook, and that embarrassment he raised, the rabbi marked and colder gazed, but in redemption from his glance, for a benign deliverance, on Clarel fell the virgin's eyes, pure home of all we seek and prize, and crossing with her humid ray the Levite's arid eyes of gray. But skill is none to word the rest. To Clarel's heart there came a swell, like the first tide that ever pressed inland, and of a deep did tell. Thereafter little speech was had, save syllables which do but skim. Even in these the zealot made a slave to one tyrannic whim, was scant while still the sage unkind sat a torpedo fish with mind, intent to paralyze, and so perchance make Clarel straight forego acquaintance with his flock, at least with two whose yearnings he, the priest, more than conjectured, oft did flow. A verse from Salem, none the less, a talismanic gentleness, maternal welled from agar faint, through the sad circle's ill constraint. Her woman's way could yet instill her prepossession, her goodwill, and when at last they bade goodbye, the visitors another eye spake at the least of amity. Canto 24, The Jibe. In the south wall where low it creeps, crossing the hollow down between Moriah and Zion, by dust heaps of rubbish in a lonely scene, a little door there is, and mean, such as a stable may befit. 'Tis locked, nor do they open it, except when days of drought begin, to let the water donkeys in. From Rogel 'tis in sight the gate of Scripture named the Dung Gate, that also the legends this instill, through which from over Kedron's rill, in fear of rescue should they try the way less roundabout and shy, by torch the tipstaves Jesus led, and so through back street hustling sped to Pilate. Odor bad it has, this gate in story, and alas, in fact as well as in fine, like ancient Rome's Port Esquiline, wherefrom the scum was cast. Next day, ascending Zion's rear, without the wall the saint and Clarel stay, their feet being hailed, and by a shout from one who nigh the small gate stood, Ho, ho there, worthy pilgrims, ho, acquainted in this neighborhood. What city's this, town beautiful of David? I'm a stranger, no. 'Tis heavy prices here must rule. Choice house, lot now. What were it worth? How goes the market? And more mirth. Down there into the place unclean, they peer, they see the man therein, an iron gray, short, rugged one, round-shouldered and of knotty bone, a hammer swinging in his hand, and pouch at side by the ill door. Him had they chanced upon before, or rather at a distance seen, upon the hills with curious mind, and eyes that scarce in pious dream, or sad humility 'twould seem, still earthward bent, would pry and pour, perceiving that he shocked the twain. His head he wagged and called again, What city's this? Town beautiful. No more they heard, but to annul the cry here Clarel, quick as thought, turned with the saint and refuge sought, passing an angle of the wall. When now at slower pace they went, Clarel observed the sinless one, turning his Bible leaves content, and presently he paused. Dear son, the scripture is fulfilled this day. Note what these lamentations say. The doom the prophet doth rehearse. In chapter 2nd, 15th verse. All that pass by clap their hands, at thee they hiss, and wag the head, saying, Is this the city? Read thyself here, read it where it stands. Inquisitive, he quick obeyed, then dull relapsed and nothing said. Though more he mused, still laboring there, upward by arid gullies bare. What object sensible to touch, or quoted fact may faith rely on, if faith confideth overmuch, that here's a monument in Zion. Its substance ebbs, see day and night, the sand subsiding from the height. In time absorbed, these grains may help to form new seabed, slug, and kelp. The gate, cried Nehemiah, the gate of David, wending through the strait, and marking that, in common drought, 'twas yellow waste within as out. The student mused, the desert sea, its part's not here, but silently, even like a leopard by our side, it seems to enter in with us. At home amid men's homes would glide, but hark, that wail how dolorous. So grieve the souls in endless dearth, yet sounds it human of the earth. Canto 25, Huts. The stone huts faced the stony wall, inside the city's towering screen, leaving a reptile lane between, and streetward not a window small, cranny nor loophole, least is seen, through excess of biting sympathies, so hateful to the people's eyes, those lepers and their evil nook. No outlook from it will they brook. None enter, condolence is none. That lava glen in Luna's sphere, more alone than any earthly one, whereto they Tycho's name have given. Not more from visitant is riven than this stone lane. But who crouch here? Have these been men? These did men greet as fellows once. It is a scene, illusion of time's mirage fleet, on dry shard heaps and things which rot. Scarce into weeds, for weeds are green, backs turned upon their den they squat. Some gossips of that tribe unclean. Time was when Holy Church did take over lands then held by Baldwin's crown. True care for such, for Jesus' sake. Whoso they read in ages gone, even as a leper was foreshown. And though apart their lot she set, it was with solemn service yet. And forms judicial lent their tone, the sick mass offered. Next was shed upon the afflicted human one the holy water. He was led unto the house aloof, his home thenceforth, and here for type of doom some cemetery dust was thrown. Over his head, die to the world, her wings of hope and fear befurled. Brother, live now to God alone. And from the people came the chant, my soul is troubled, joy is curbed, all my bones they are disturbed. God thy strength and mercy grant. And next in order due the priest, each habit and utensil blessed, haircloth and barrel clapper glove, and one by one as these were given, with law's dread charge pronounced in love, so link by link life's chain was riven, the leper faded in remove, the dell of isolation here. To match, console, and could man prove more than a man and part endear, how well had come that smothered text, which Julian's pagan mind hath vexed, and for soul that finds it clear, he lives forbid, from him our faces have we hid, no heart desires him, none redress, he hath no form, nor comeliness, for a transgressor he's suspected, behold, he is a thing infected, smitten of God, by men rejected, but otherwise the ordinance flows, for moving toward the allotted cell, beside the priest the leper goes, I've chosen it, here will I dwell, he's left at gate the priest puts up, across a can therein doth drop. The first small alms, which laymen swell, to aisles returned, the people kneel, heart-piercing suppliance appeal, but not the austere maternal care, when closed the ritual ended there, with benediction yet to heal, Rome did not falter, could not faint, she prompted many a tender saint, widow or virgin ministrant, but chiefly may Sabella here, and chance citation fitly show, Countess who under Zion's brow, in house of St. John, almoner, tended the cripples many a year, though long from Europe's clime begone, that pest which in the parish age could tendence such in love engage, still in the east the rot eats on, natheless the Syrian leper goes, unfriended save that man bestows his eye averting chanceful pence, then turns and shares disgust of sense. Bonds sympathetic bind these three, faith, reverence, and charity. If faith once fail, the faltering mood affects needs must the sisterhood. Canto 26. The Gate of Zion. As Clarel entered with the guide, beset they were by that sad crew, with inarticulate clamor plied, and faces yet defacements too. Appealed to them, but could not give expression. There still sensitive, our human nature, deep inurned, in voiceless vigilessness, yearned. Behold, proud worm, if such can be, what yet may come, yea, even to thee, who knoweth, canst forecast the fate in infinite ages, probe thy state, sinless art thou, then these sin not. These are men, and thou art what? For Clarel, turning in affright, fain would his eyes renounce the light, but Nehemiah held on his path, mild and unmoved, scarce seemed to heed the suitors or deplore the scathe, his soul preoccupied and freed from actual objects, through the sway of visionary scenes intense, the wonders of a mystic day, and Zion's old magnificence. Nor hither had he come to show the leper huts, but only so to visit once again the hill and gate Davidic, and ascent they win the port's high battlement, and thence in sweep they view at will that theater of heights which hold, as in a Colosseum's fold, they guarded Zion, they command the Mount of Solomon's offense, the crag of evil counsel, and Iscariot's gallows eminence. Pit too they mark where long ago dull fires of refuse shot below, the city's litter smoldering burned, clouding the glen with smoke impure, and griming the foul shapes obscure of dismal chain gangs in their shame, raking the garbage thither spurned, Tophet the place, transferred in name to penal hell, but shows there not to win here a redeeming thought? Yes, welcome in its nearer seat, the white cenaculum they greet, where still an upper room is shown, in dream avouch the very one wherein the supper first was made, and Christ those words of parting said, those words of love by loved St. John, so tenderly recorded, ah, they be above us like a star, those paschal words, but they descend, and as within the wall they wend, a horror hobbling on low crutch, draws near, but still refrains from touch. Before the saint in low estate, he fawns who with considerate, mild glance regards him, Clarel shrank, and is he of human rank? Knowest thou him, he asked? Yea, yea, and beamed on that disfeatured clay, to live to me, to him are due these thanks, the God of me and you, and all to whom his own shall go, in paradise and be reclad, transfigured like the morning glad. Yea, friend in Christ, this man I know, this fellow man, and afterward, the student from true sources heard how Nehemiah had proved his friend, sole friend even of that trunk of woe, when sisters failed him in the end. Canto 27, Matron and Maid. Days fleet, no vain enticements lure, Clarel to Agar's roof. Her tact prevailed. The rabbi might not act, his will austere, and more, a prey to one devouring whim. Nathan yet more, absented him. Welcome the matron ever had, for Clarel was the youth not one, new from the clime she doted on? And if indeed an exile sad, by Daisy in a letter laid, reminded be of home delight, though they're first greeted by the sight of that transmitted flower, how then not feel a kin emotion bred at glimpse of face of countrymen, though stranger, yes, a Jewess, born in Gentile land where nature's wreath exhales the first creation's breath, the waste of Judah made her lorn, the student sharing not her blood, nearer in tie of spirit stood than he she called Rabboni. So in Agar's liking did he grow deeper in heart of Ruth and learned, the more how both for freedom yearned, and much surmise, too, left unsaid, by the tried mother and the maid, however dull natures read the signs, where untold grief a hermit pines, anxious, strained, weak, nervous air of trouble which like shame may wear. Her gabardine, though sole and faint, may look pathetic self-restraint. For ends pernicious real care, sorrow made dumb where duties move, never eluded love, true love, a deep diviner. Here for space the past of wife and daughters trace, of Agar's kin for many an age, not one had seen the heritage of Judah, Gentile lands detained. So while they clung to Moses' lore, far from the land his guidance gained, was Eld's romance a treasured store, like plate inherited in fine it graced, in seemly way benign, that family feeling of the Jew, which hallowed by each priestly rite, makes home a temple sheds delight. Naomi ere her trial knew, happy was Agar ere the seas. She crossed for Zion, pride she took, pride if in small felicities, pride in her little court, a nook where morning glories starred the door. So sweet without, so snug within, at sunny matin meal, serene, her damask cloth she'd note. It bore in Hebrew text about the hymn, mid-broidered cipher and device. If I forget thee, O Jerusalem, and swam before her humid eyes. In rainbow distance, paradise, faith ravished, followed, fancy's path, in more of bliss than nature hath. But ah, the dream to test by deed, to seek to handle the ideal, and make a sentiment serve need, to try to realize the unreal. 'Twas not that Agar reasoned, nay, she did but feel true woman's way. What solace from the desert wind, far from known friends, familiar kin? How nearer God, the chanted Zion showed graves, but graves to gasp and die on. Nathan, her convert for his sake, grief had she stifled long, but now the nursling one lay pale and low. Oft of that waxen face she'd think, beneath the stones her heart would sink, and in hard bitterness repine. Slim grass, poor babe, to grave of thine. Ruth, too, when here a child she came, would blurt in reckless childhood's way, "'Tis a bad place," but the sad dame would check, and as the maiden grew, counsel she kept. Too much she knew, but how to give her feelings play, with cherished pots of herbs and flowers. She strove to appease the hungry hours, each leaf bedewed with many a tear, for Gentile land how green and dear. What though the dame and daughter both, in synagogue behind the grate, dividing sexes ofttimes sat, it was with hearts but chill and loath. Never was heaven served by that. Cold form, with Clarel, seemed to come, a waftage from the fields of home, crossing the wind from Judah's sand, reviving Agar and of power, to make the bud in Ruth expand, with promise of unfolding hour. Canto 28, Tomb and Fountain. Clarel and Ruth, might it but be that range thee could green uplands free by gala orchards, when they fling their bridal favors, buds of spring, and dreamy in her morning swoon, the lady of the night, the moon, looks pearly as the blossoming, and youth and nature's fond accord wins Eden back, that tales abstruse of Christ the crucified, pain's Lord, seem foreign, forged incongruous. Restrictions of that Eastern code immured the maiden from abode. Frequent nor distant she withdrew, except with Jewess, scarce with Jew. So none the less in former mode, Nehemiah still with Clarel went, who grew in liking and content. In company of one whose word babbled of Ruth, my bird, God's bird. The twain were one mild morning led out to a waste where beauty clings, finding a grot how doubly dead, the rifled sepulchre of kings. Hewn from the rock a sunken space, conducts to garlands fit for Vesk. In sculptured frieze above a tomb, palm leaves, pine, apples, grapes, these bloom. Involved in death to puzzle us, as 'twere thy line, Theocritus. Dark Joel's text of terror threading, yes, strange that Pocahontas wedding of contraries in old belief, Hellenic cheer, Hebraic grief. The homicide Herods, men aver, inured behind that wreathage were. But who is he uncovered seen, profound in shadow of the tomb, reclined with meditative mind, intent upon the tracery? A low wind waves his Lydian hair, a funeral man, yet richly fair, fair as the sabled violets be. The frieze in this secluded one, retaining each a separate tone, beauty yet harmonized in grace, and contrast to the barren place. But noting that he was discerned, salute the stranger, made then turned, and shy pass forth in obvious state of one who would keep separate. Those cells explored through dale they paced downward in one Moriah's walls and seated them. Clarel recalls the colonnades that Herod traced, Herod magnificent Idumean, in marble along the mountain flank, column on column, rank on rank, above the valley, Tyropion, Eastward in altitude they view, across Jehoshaphat, a crag of sepulchres and huts. Thereto they journey, but a while they lag, beneath to mark the tombs in row, pierced square along the gloomy steep, and beetling broadside, and with show of portholes in black battleship they climb, and Clarel turning saw their late resort, the hill of law, Moriah above the Kedron's bed, and turreting his aged head, the angle of King David's wall, acute scene here to best scanned, as toward that cliff though not so tall, nor tempest sculptured therewithal, envisage in Franconian land, by marvel of the pass, anon a call he hears behind, in note familiar being man's remote, no less in strange and hollowed tone, as twere a voice from out of the tomb. A tomb it is, and he in gloom of porch there biddeth them begone, clings to his knee a toddling one, bewildered, poising in we hand a pictured page, Nehemiah's boon. He passive in the sun it stand, morosely then the Arab turns, snatches the gift and drops and spurns, as down now from the crag they win. Reverted glance see Clarel lend, thou guest of death, which in his house sleepest nightly, mayst thou not espouse his daughter peace? Aslant they come, where hid in shadow of the rocks, stone steps descend unto Siloam, proof to the fervid noonday tide, reflected from the glen's steep side. Moist ledge with ledge here interlocks, vaulting a sunken grotto deep, down there as quiet as in sleep. I knew the stranger they descried, sitting upon a step full low, watching the fountain's troubled tide, which after ebb began to flow, gurgling from viewless caves. The lull broke by the flood is wonderful. Science explains it, bides no less, the true innate mysteriousness. Through him there might the vision flit of angel in Bethesda's pool, with porches 5 so troubling it, that whoso bathed then was made whole. Or by an equal dream beguiled, did he but list the fountain moan, like Ammon's in the Libyan wild, for muse and oracle both gone. By chance a jostled pebble there slipped from the surface down the stair. It jarred, it broke the brittle spell. Siloam was but a rural well. Clarel, who could again but shun to obtrude on the secluded one, turned to depart ere yet we go. Said Nehemiah, I will below. Dim be mine eyes, more dim they grow. I'll wash them in these waters cool, as did the blind the master sent, and who came seeing from this pool, and down the grotto stairs he went. The stranger just ascending stood, and as the votary laved his eyes, he marked, looked up, and Clarel viewed, and they exchanged quick sympathies, though but in glance, moved by that act of one whose faith transfigured fact. A bond seemed made between them there, and presently the trio fair, over Kedron, and in one accord of quietude and chastened tone, approached the spot, tradition's own, for ages held the garden of our Lord. Canto 29, The Recluse. Ere yet they win that verge and line, reveal the stranger, name him Vine. His home to tell kin tribe estate, would not avail a lighting grow, as on the tree the mistletoe. All gifts unique in seeds of fate, born on the winds these immigrate, and graft the stock. Vines mannered shy, a clog, a hindrance might imply, a lack of parlor wont. But grace, which is in substance deep and grain, may peradventure well pass by. The polish of veneer, no trace of passion soil or lucre's stain. Though life was now half ferried over, if use he served not, but forbore, such indolence might still but pine, and dearth of rich and sin of high. Apollo's slave in Mammon's mine, better Amidus, shepherd lie. A charm of subtle, a virtue shed, a personal influence coveted, whose source was difficult to tell, as ever was that perfume spell of paradise flowers invisible, which angels round Cecilia bred. As saint then do we here unfold, nay, the ripe flush, Venetian mold, Events no nature saintly fine, but blood like swart, Vesuvian wine. What cooled the current under cheer of opulent softness, reigned austere control of self, flesh, but scarce pride, was curbed, desire was mortified, but less indeed by moral sway than doubt if happiness throw clay. Be reachable, no sackcloth man, howbeit in sort Carthusian, though born a Sybarite, and yet not beauty might he all forget, the beauty of the world and charm, he prized it though it scarce might warm, like to the nunnery's denizen, his virgin soul communed with men, but through the wicket was it clear, this coyness bordered not on fear, fear or on an apprehensive sense, not wholly seemed it diffidence, recluse, nor less did strangely wend ambiguous elfishness behind all that an aerial unknown. It seemed his very speech and tone betrayed disuse. Thronged streets astir, divine but ampler cloisters were. Cloisters? No monk he was allow, but gleamed the richer for the shade, about him as in somber glade, of Virgil's wood the Sibyl's golden bow. Canto 30, the site of the Passion. And wherefore by the convents be gardens, ascetics roses twine, nay, but there is a memory within a garden walking see, the angered God, and where the vine and olive in the darkling hours, inweave green sepulchres of bowers, who to defend us from despair, pale undergoes the passion there in solitude, yes, memory links Eden and Gethsemane, so that not meaningless, in sway gardens adjoin the convents gray, on Salem's hill and Solomon's years of gala, oh, the happy town. In groups the people sauntered down, and Kedron crossing lightly wound, where now the tragic grove appears, then palmy and a pleasure ground. The student and companions win, the wicket pause and enter in, by roots strapped down and fold on fold, gnarled into winds and knobs and knees, and olives monumental trees. The pangs survivors they behold, a wizened blue fruit drops from them, nipped harvest of Jerusalem. Wistful here Clarel turned toward vine, and would have spoken, but as well, pale Dathan swallowed in the mink, tradition legend lent such spell, and wrapped him in remoteness so. Meanwhile in shade the olives throw, Nehemiah pensive sat him down, and turned the chapter in St. John. What frame of mind may Clarel woo? He the night scene in picture drew, the band which came for sinless blood, with swords and staves a multitude. They brush the twigs, small birds take wing, the dead boughs crackle, lanterns swing, till lo they spy them through the wood. Master, 'tis Judas, then the kiss, and he falters not at this, speechless, unspeakably submiss, the fulsome serpent on the cheek, sliming endurance more than meek, endurance of the fraud foreknown, and fiend heart in the human one. Ah, now the pard on Clarel springs, the passion's narrative plant stings. To break away he turns and views, the white-haired, under olive bowed, immersed in scripture, and he woos. Whatever the chapter read aloud, the saint looked up, but with a stare, absent and bewildered, vacant there, as part to kill time, part for task, some shepherd old pores over book, shelf farm book of his life forepast. When he bestirred him and amassed, if chance one interrupt and ask, what read you? He will turn a look, which shows he knows not what he reads, of knowing he but weary heeds, of scarce remembers, here much so, with Nehemiah dazed out and low, and presently to intercept, over Clarel to strange numbness crept. A monk custodian of the ground drew nigh and showed him by the steep, the rock of legendary mound where James and Peter fell asleep. Dully the pilgrim scanned the spot, nor spake, Signor, and thinkest thou not? 'Twas sorrow brought their slumber on, St. Luke avers no sluggard rest, nay, but excess of feeling pressed, till ache to apathy was won. To Clarel 'twas no hollow word, experience did proof afford, for vine aloof he loitered, shrunk in privity, and shunned the monk. Clarel awaited him, he came, the shadow of his previous air, merged in a settled neutral frame, assumed may be, would Vine disclaim all sympathy the youth might share. About to leave, they turned to look for him but late estranged in book. Asleep he lay, the face bent down, viewless between the crossing arms, one slack hand on the good book thrown, and peace that every care becharms. Then died the shadow off from Vine, a spirit seemed he not unblessed, as here he made a quiet sign unto the monks spare to molest. Let this poor dreamer take his rest, his fill of rest, but now it stand, who there alertly glances up by grotto of the bitter cup. Spruce and with volume light in hand, bound smartly late in reference scanned. Inquisitive Philistine, lo, tourist replaced the pilgrim so. At peep of that brisk dapper man, over Vine's face a ripple ran, a freakish mockery, elfin light, whereby what thing may Clarel see? O angels rescue from the sight, Paul Pry, and in Gethsemane, he shrunk the thought of it to fan, nor like the freak in Vine that threw such a suggestion into view, nor less it hit that fearful man. Canto 31, Rolf. The hill above the garden here, they rove and chance, ere long to meet a second stranger keeping cheer. Apart, trapper or pioneer, he looked astray in Judas' seat, or one who might his business ply, on waters under tropic sky. Perceiving them as they drew near, he rose, removed his hat to greet, disclosing so in shapely sphere a marble brow over face, and browned, so Sunium by her fane is crowned, one reddish superscription clear, a genial heart, a brain austere, and further deemed that such a man, though given to study as might seem, was no scholastic partisan or euphonist of academe, but supplemented Plato's theme with daedal life in boats and tents, a messmate of the elements, and yet more bronzed in face than mine, sensitive still and frankly kind, too frank, too unreserved may be, and indiscreet in honesty. But what implies the tinge of soil, like tarnish on Pizarro's spoil, precious in substance, rudely wrought, Peruvian plate which here is caught? What means this touch of the untoward, in aspect hinting nothing froward? From Baalbek for a new sojourn, to Jury Rough had made return, to Jury's inexhausted shore of barrenness, wherevermore some lurking thing he hoped to gain, slipped quite behind the parrot lore, conventional and what attain, struck by each clear or latent sign, expressive in the stranger's air, the student glanced from him to Vine. Peers, yes, needs that these must pair. Clarel was young, in promise fine. To him her first were brought together, exceptional natures of a weather, strange as the tropics with strange trees, strange birds, strange fishes, skies and seas. To one in whose some meager land his bread wins by the horny hand. What now may hap, what outcome new, elicited by contact true, frank cordial contact of the twain? Crude wonderment, and proved but vain. If average mortals social be, and yet but seldom truly meet, closing like halves of apple sweet, how with the rarer in degree, the informal salutation done, Vine into his dumb castle went, not as all parley he would shun, but looking down from battlement, ready, if need were, to accord reception to the other's word, nay, far from wishing to decline, and neutral not without design. Maybe, look by Christ's belfry set, appears the Moslem minaret. So to fill trying pause alone, cried Rolf, and over the deep defile of Kedron pointed toward the town where, thronged about by many a pile monastic, but no vernal bower, the Saracen shaft and Norman tower, and truce stand guard beside that dome which canopies the Holy's home. The tower looks lopped, it shows forlorn, a stunted oak whose crown is shorn, but see palm-like the minaret stands superior, and the tower commands. Yon shaft, said Clarel, seems ill-placed. Aye, seems but 'tis for memory based. The story's known how Omar there, after the town's surrender meek, hallowed to him as dear to Greek, clad in his clouts of camel's hair, and with the patriarch robed in fine, walking beneath the dome divine, when came the Islam hour for prayer, declined to use the carpet good, spread for him in the church, but stood without, even yonder where is set the monumental minaret, and earnest and true suppliance cried, smiting his chest, me overrule. Allah to me be merciful. 'Twas little shared the victor pride, though victor, so the church he saved, a purpose from that law engraved, which prompt transferred to Allah's soul, each fane where once his right might roll. Long afterward, the town being stormed by Christian knights, how ill conformed the butchery then to Omar's prayer, and heart magnanimous, but spare. Response they looked, and thence he warmed yon great cathedral of the tomb, who reared it first, a woman weak, a second Mary, first to seek, in pagan darkness which had come, the place where they had laid the Lord. Queen Helena, she traced the site, and cleared the ground, and made it bright, with all that zeal could then afford, but Constantine, there falls the blight. The mother's warm, emotional heart subserved it till the sun's cold part. Even he who, timing well the tide, laced not the cross upon Rome's flag, supreme till Jove began to lag behind the new religion's stride, and Helena, ah, may it be, the saint herself not quite was free from that which in the years bygone made certainly stately dames of France, such as the fair de Maintenon, to string their rosaries of pearl, and found brave chapels sweet romance. Coquetry of the borrowed curl, you let me prate, nay, nay, go on, cried Clarel, yet in such a tone it showed disturbance. Laud the dame, her church admit no doom it fears, unquelled by force of battering years, years, and sieges, sword and flame, fallen, rebuilt to fall anew, by armies shaken, earthquake too. Lo, it abides, if not the same, in self-same spot last time 'twas burnt, the rationalists a lesson learnt, but you know all, nay, not the end, said Vine and Clarel, we attend, while on the morrow never shrunk from wonted right the steadfast monk, through hurt and even maimed were some, by crash of the ignited dome, staunch stood the walls as friars profess, and not in fraud the central cell, Christ's tomb and faceless citadel. The flames did tenderly caress, nor harm while smoking, smoldering beams fallen across, lent livid gleams to Golgotha, but none the less in robed procession of his God, the metered one the cinders trod. Before the calcined altar, there the most he raised in hymn and prayer, went up from ashes, these air chill, away were brushed and trowel shrill, and hod and hammer came in place. 'Tis now some 80 years ago, and Lima's first convulsion so, when shock on shock had left slim trace of 100 temples, and in mood of malice dwelling on the face itself as tortured and subdued, too uncompliant, the cloud pitch black lowered over the rubbish, and the land, not less than sea did countermand, her buried courses heaved them back, and flocks and men fled on the track, which wins the Andes. Then went forth the prelate with intrepid train, rolling the anthem mid the rain of ashes white, in rocking plain new boundaries staked they south and north, for ampler piles these stand and cheer, the priest reclaim the quaking sphere. Hold it he shall so long as spins this star of tragedy, this orb of sins. That, Clarel said, is not my mind. Rome's priests forever rule the world. The priest, I said, though some be hurled from anchor nor a haven find, not less religion's ancient port till the crack of doom shall be resort, and stress of weather for mankind, yea, long as children feel affright, in darkness men shall fear a God, and long as daisies yield delight, shall see his footprints in the sod. Is it ignorance? This ignorant state science doth but elucidate. Deepen, enlarge, but though 'twere made demonstrable that God is not, what then? It would not change this lot. The ghost would haunt, nor could be laid. Intense he spake, his eyes of blue, altering and to eerie hue, like Tyrian seas when overcast, the witch vine noted, nor enjoy, inferring thence an ocean waste of earnestness without a buoy, an inference which afterward acquaintance led him to discard, or modify, or not employ. Clarel ill relish, Rolf in tone, half elegiac, thus went on. Phyla, upon thy sacred ground, Osiris' broken tomb is found. A god how good, whose good proved vain, and strife with bullying, Python slain, prolonged the ritual chant or moan of pilgrims by that mystic stone, went up even much as now ascend the liturgies of yearning prayer to one who met a kindred end, Christ tombed in turn and worshipped there, and pointed, hint you, here Asvine, and Christ Osiris met decline, anew, nay, nay, and yet passed out. Strange is that text St. Matthew won from gray Hosea in sentence, out of Egypt have I called my son. Here Clarel spake, and with a stir, not all assured in eager plight, but does not Matthew there refer only to the return from flight? Flight into Egypt, maybe so, said Rolf, but then Hosea, nay, will let it pass, and fell delay. Of talk they mused to Cicero, Rolf sudden said, is a long way from Matthew, yet somehow he comes to mind here, he and his fine tomes, which changed the gods would serve to read for modern essays, and indeed, his age was much like ours, doubt ran, faith flagged negations which sufficed, lawyer, priest, statesman, gentleman, not yet being popularly prized, the augurs hence retain some state, which served for the illiterate. Still the decline so swiftly ran from stage to stage that to believe, except for slave or artisan, seemed heresy. Even doubts which met horror at first grew obsolete, and in a decade to bereave of founded trust in Sire Supreme was a vocation sophists throve, each weaving his thin thread of dream into the shroud for Numus Jove. Caesar his atheism avowed before the Senate, but why crowd? Examples here, the gods were gone. Tully scarce dreamed they could be won back into credence, lest that earth ever could know yet mightier birth of deity. He died, Christ came, and in due hour that impious Rome, emerging from vast wreck and shame, held the forefront of Christendom. The inference, the lesson, come. Let fools count on face closing knell. Time, God are inexhaustible. But what? So earnest. I again. Hard for a fountain to refrain, breathe vine. Was that but irony? At least no envy in the strain, Rolf scarce remarked or let go by. For Clarel, when ye meetings scan and waste the Baghdad caravan, and solitude puts on the stir, clamor dust din of Nineveh, as horsemen, camels, footmen, all, soldier and merchant free and thrall, pour by an in-tide processional, so to the novice streamed along Rolf's filing thoughts, a wildering throng. Their sway he owned, and yet how vine, who breathed few words or gave dumb sign, him more allured, suggestive more of choicer treasure, rare store, reserved like kids' doubloons, long sought without the wand, the ball of thought and chain yet dragging. On they strained oblique along the upland, slow and mute until a point they gained, where devotees will pause and know a tenderness may be. Here then, while tarry now these pilgrim men, the interval let be assigned a niche for image of a novel mind. Canto 32 of Rama. That Rama whom the Indians sung, a god he was, but knew it not, hence vainly puzzled at the wrong, misplacing him in human lot. Curtailment of his right he bare, rather than wrangle, but no less, was taunted for his tameness there, a fugitive without redress. He never the Holy Spirit grieved, nor the divine in him bereaved, though what that was he might not guess. Live they who, like to Rama, led unspotted from the world aside, like Rama are discredited, like him in outlawry abide? May life and fable so agree, the innocent, if lawless elf, ethereal in virginity, retains the consciousness of self. Though black frost nip, though white frost chill, nor white frost nor the black may kill, the patient root, the vernal sense, surviving hard experience, as grass the winter, even that curse, which is the wormwood mixed with gall, better dependent on the worse, divine upon the animal. That cannot make such natures fall, though yielding easy rein indeed to impulse which the fibers breed, no quarreling with indolence, shall these the cup of grief dispense. Deliberate to any heart, not craft they know, nor envy smart, theirs be the thoughts that dive and skim, theirs the spiced tears that overbrim, and theirs the dimple and the lightsome whim. Such natures, and but such have got familiar with strange things that dwell, repressed in mortals, and they tell of riddles in the prosiest lot. Mince ye some matter for faith's sake, and heaven's good name, 'tis these shall make. Revolt there, and the gloss disclaim, they con the page kept down with those which Adam's secret frame disclose, and Eve's nor dare dissent from truth, although disreputable sooth. The riches in them be a store, unmerchantable in the ore, no matter 'tis an open mine. Dig, find ye gold, why make it thine? The shrewder knack hast thou the gift, smelt then in mold and good, go with thy thrift. Was ever earthborn white like this? I in the verse may be he is. Canto 33, By the Stone. Over against the temple here, a monastery unrestored, named from prediction of our Lord, crumbled long since, outlying near, some stones remain which seats afford, and one the fond tradition state is that whereon the Saviour sate, and prophesied, and sad became to think what under sword and flame the proud Jerusalem should be, then spread before him sunnily, pillars and palms, the white, the green, marble enfoliaged, a fair scene, but now a vision here conferred, pale as Pompeii disinterred. Long Rolf on knees, his elbows resting, and head inlocked and hands upright, sat facing it in steadfast plight, and brooded on that town slow wasting, and here, he said, here did he sit, in leafy covert, say, beheld the city, and wept over it. Luke's words, and hard to be excelled, so just the brief expression there, Ruth's rendering, with earnest air, more he threw out in kind the same, the which did Clarel ponder still, for though the words might frankness claim, with reverence for sight and name, no further went they, nor could fill faith's measure scarce her dwindled gill. Now standard on the plain of Troy, mused Clarel, as one might look down from Gargarus with quiet joy. In verifying Homer's sights, yes, scarce believe in Venus's crown, and rescues in those Trojan fights, whereby she saved her supple son, so Rolf regards from these wan heights, yon walls and slopes to Christians dear, much it annoyed him and perplexed, than free concession so sincere, concession due both sight and text, dissent itself would less appear to imply negation. But anon they mark in groups hard by the gate which overlooks Jehoshaphat, some Hebrew people of the town, who marvels that outside they come, since few within have seemly home. Said Rolf, they chat there on the seats, but seldom gossip in their streets, who here may see a busy one. Where's naught to do, not much is done. How live they then? What bread can be? In almost every country known, rich Israelites these kinsmen own. The hat goes round the world, but see, moved by his words, their eyes more reach toward that dull group, dwarfed in the dream of distance sad. Penguins they seem drawn up on Patagonian beach. O city, Rolf cried, house on moor, with shutters burst and blackened door, like that thou showest, and the gales still round thee blow the banshee wails. Well might the priest in temple start, hearing the voice, woe we depart. Clarel gave ear, albeit his glance diffident skimmed Vine's countenance, as mainly here he interest took, and all the fervid speaker said, reflected in the mute one's look, a face indeed quite overlaid with tremulous meanings which evade or shun regard, nay hardly brook paternal scanning. Rolf went on, the very natives of the town methinks would turn from it and flee, But for that curse which is its crown, that curse which clogs so poverty, see them but see yon cowering men, the brood without the hen. City that dost the prophet's stone, how oft against the judgment dread, how often would I fain have spread my wings to cover thee, mine own, and ye would not, hadst thou but known the things which to thy peace belong. Nehemiah was rejoining them, gray as the old Jerusalem, over which how earnestly he hung, but him the seated audience scan, as he were sole surviving man, of tribe extinct or world. The ray which lit his features died away. He flagged, and as some trouble moved, apart and aimlessly he roved. Canto 34, They Tarry. How solitary on the hills sitteth the city, and how still, from vine the murmur came, a cadence as it were compelled, even by the picture's silent claim. That said, again his peace he held, biding as in a misty rain, some motionless lone fisherman, by mountain brook, but wolf, thy word is Jeremiah's, and here well heard, I seer of Anathoth. Behold, yon object tallies with thy text. How then stays reason quite unvexed? Fulfillment here but falleth cold, that stable proof which man would fold. How may it be derived from things subject to change and vanishings? But let that pass, all now's revised. Zion, like Rome, is Niberized. Yes, doubt attends, doubt's heavy hand is set against us, and his brand still warreth for his natural lord. King Commonplace, whose rule abhorred, yearly extends in vulgar sway, absorbs Atlantis and Cathay. Eye reaches toward Diana's moon, affirming it a clinkered blot, deriding pale Endymion, since thus he aims to level all, the Milky Way he'll yet allot for Apian to his capital. Then tell then, what charm may save thy marvel Palestine from grave, whereto wins many a bier and pall of old illusion? What for earth? Ah, change irreverent, at odds with goodly customs, gracious gods, new things elate so thrust their birth up through dejection of the old, as through dead sheaths is here foretold. He consummation of the past, and garish dawning of a day, whose noon not saints desire to stay, and hardly I, who break love's fast, with Christ with what strange lords may sup. The reserves of time seem marching up, but nay, what novel thing may be, no germ being new by fate's decree, have not earth's vitals heaved in change, repeated some wild element, or action been evolved, the range of surface split, the deeps unpent, continents in God's cauldrons cast, and this without affecting so the neutralizing of the past, whose rudiments persistent flow, from age to age, transmitting own, the evil with the good the taint, deplored in Solomon's complaint. Faint's pot of ointment wilt have done, Lord of the fly, God of the grub, needest foul all sweets, thou Beelzebub. He ended to evade or lay deductions hard for tender clay. Clarel recalled each prior word of Ruth, which scarcely kept accord, as seemed with much dropped latterly, or vine. He twitched from ground a weed, apart then picked it, seed by seed. Ere long they rise and climbing greet, thing preeminent in seat, whose legend still can touch the heart, prompted one thereto impart, chapter of the Middle Age, which next to give, but let the page, the narrator's rambling way forget, and make to run an even flow his interrupted tale, and let description brief the sight for show. Canto 35, Arokaf and Adaman. In spot revered by myriad men, whence as alleged Emmanuel rose into the heaven, receptive then, a little plastered tower is set, pale in the light that Syria knows, upon the peak of Olivet. 'Tis modern, a replacement note, for ample pile of years remote, nor yet ill suits in dwindled bound, man's faith retrenched, 'twas Hakim's deed, mad caliph, founder still of creed, long held by tribes not unrenowned, who erst the pastoral height discrowned. Of Helena's church, woe for the dome, and many a goodly temple more, which hither lured from Christendom the childlike pilgrim throngs of yore. 'Twas of that church so brave erewhile, blessed landmark on the olive height, which Arcoth told of in the isle Iona, shipwrecked there in sight. The palmer dragged they from the foam, the Chaldees of the abbey fair, him shelter yielding and a home, in guerdon for which love and care, received in St. Columba's pile, with travel talk he did beguile. Their eve of Yule the tempest beat, it shook the abbey's founded seat, rattling the crucifix on wall, and thrice was heard the clattering fall of gabled tiles, but host and guest, abbot and palmer took their rest inside monastic ingle tall. What unto them were those lashed seas, or Patmos of the Hebrides? The isles were gods, it was the time the church and Jewry dwelt at ease, though under Arabs Omer's prime, penultimate of pristine zeal, while yet throughout faith's commonweal the tidings had not died away, not yet had died into dismay of dead echoes that recede, glad tidings of great joy indeed, thrilled to the shepherds on the sward. Behold, to you is born this day a Savior, which is Christ the Lord. While yet in chapel, altar, shrine, the mica in the marble new glistened like spangles of the dew. One minister then was Palestine, all monumental. Arculf first the wonders of the tomb rehearsed, and Golgotha then told of trees, olives, which in the twilight breeze sighed plaintive by the convent's leck. The convent in Gethsemane perished long since, then on the hill in sight revealed through Jesus' grace, hereat both crossed themselves apace. A great round church with goodly skill is nobly built, and fragrant blows morning through triple porticos. But over that blessed place where meet the last prints of the wounded feet, the roof is open to the sky. 'Tis there the sparrows love to fly upon Ascension Day at end of Mass. Winds, vocal winds descend among the worshippers. Amain the abbot signs the cross again, and Arcoff on and all that night, the mountain temple's western flank, the same which fronts Moriah's height, in memory of the apostles' light, shows 12 dyed fires in Oriel's 12, thither from towers on Cadron's bank, and where the slope and terrace shelve, the gathered townsfolk gaze afar, and those 12 flowers of flame suffuse their faces with reflected hues of violet, gold, and cinnabar. Much so from Naples in our sail we touched there, shipping jar and bale. I saw Vesuvius's plume of fire redden the bay, tinge mast and spire. But on Ascension Eve, 'tis then a light shows, kindled not by men. Look, pointing to the hearth, dost see how these dun embers here by me lambent are licked by flaky flame? Olivet gleams them much the same, caressed, curled over, yea, and curled by fleecy fires, which typic be. O Lamb of God, O Light of the world, in fear and yet a fear divine, once more the Chaldee made the sign, then fervid snatched the palmer's hand, clung to it like a very child, thrilled by some wondrous story wild, of elf or fay, nor could command his eyes to quit their gaze at him who had seen it, but how grim. The Pictish storm king sang refrain, scoffing about those gables high, over Arculf and good Adnan. The abbot and the palmer rest, the legends follow them and die, those legends which, be it confessed, did nearer bring to them the sky, did nearer woo it to their hope of all that seers and saints avow, than Galileo's telescope can bid it unto prosing science now. Canto 36, The Tower. The tower they win, some Greeks at hand, pilgrims in silence view the land. One family group, in listless tone, are just in act of firing down. All leave at last, and these remain, as by a hearthstone on the plain, when Ruth is gone. But can they shame to tell the evasive thought within? Does intellect assert a claim against the heart her yielding ken. But he, the wanderer, the while see him, and what may so beguile? Images he the ascending Lord, pale as the moon which dawn may meet, convoyed by a serene accord, and swoon of faces young and sweet, mid chaplets, stars, and halcyon wings, and many ministering things. As him they mark enkindled so, what inklings negatives they know, but leaving him in silence do, they enter there, the print to view, affirmed of Christ the parting foot, they mark it, nor a question moot. Next climb the stair, and win the roof, thence on Jerusalem look down, and Kedron cringing by the town, whose stony lanes map-like were shown, is yon the city dissolute? Said Rolf, nay liker to some print, old blurred bewrinkled and mesotent, and distant look what lifeless hills, dead long for them the hymn of rills, and birds, nor trees, nor ferns they know, nor lichen there hath leave to grow, and baleful glens which black the blood, o the son of Kish. Far peep they gain of waters which in cauldron brood, sunk mid the mounts of leaden bane, the Sodom wave, or putrid sea, or sea of salt, or cities five, or lots, or des, asphaltite, or Asaph, Setida, all these being names indeed with which they give that sight of foul iniquities abhorred, with wordless look intent, as if the scene confirmed some thought, which in heart's lonelier hour was lent, mine stood at gaze, the rest were wrought according unto kind. The Mount of Olives, and in distance there, the charnel wave, who may recount, Hope's hill descries the pit despair, flitted the thought they nothing said, and down they drew, as ground they tread. Nehemiah met them, pleaseth ye, fair stroll awaits if all agree. Over the hill let us go on, Bethany is a pleasant town, I'll lead for well the way I know. He gazed expectant, would they go? Before that simpleness so true, Vine showed embarrassed, Clarel too, yet thanked him with a grateful look, benign, and Rolf the import took, and whispered him in softened key, some other day, and might it be, such influence their spirits knew, from all the tower had given to view, untuned they felt for Bethany? Canto 37, a sketch. Not knowing them in very heart, nor why to join them they were loth, he disappointed, moved apart, with sad pace creeping dull as doth, along the bow the nerveless sloth. For ease upon the ground they sit, and Rolf with eye still following where Nehemiah slow-footed it, asked Clarel, know you anything of this man's prior life at all? Nothing, said Clarel, I recall. Said Rolf, a mariner like him. A mariner? Yes, one whom grim disaster made as meek as he. There plodding vine here showed the zest of a deep human interest. We crave of you his history. And Rolf began, scarce would I tell of what this mariner befell, so much is it with cloud overcast, were he not now gone home at last, into the green land of the dead, where he encamps and peace is shed. Hardy he was sanguine and bold, the master of a ship, his mind, in night watch frequent he unrolled, as seamen sometimes are inclined, on serious topics to his mate, a man to creed austere resigned, the master ever spurned at fate. Calvin's or Zeno's always still, man like he stood by man's free will, and power to effect each thing he would, did reason but pronounce it good. The subaltern held in humble way that still heaven's overruling sway, will and event on waters far, where map man never made survey, gliding along in easy plight, the strong one brake the lull of night, emphatic in his willful war, but staggered, for there came a jar, with fell arrest to keel and speech a hidden rock. The pound, the grind, collapsing sails over deck declined. Sleek billows curling in the breach, and nature with her neutral mind. A wreck 'twas in the former days, those waters then obscure amaze. The isles were dreaded, every chain. Better to brave the immense of sea, and venture for the Spanish main. beating and rowing against the trades, then float to valleys neath the lee, nor far removed in palmy shades, so deemed he, strongly erring there. To boats they take the weather fair, never the sky a cloudlet new, a temperate wind, unvarying blue. Week after week yet came despair, the bread though doled and water stored, ran low and lower, ceased. They burned, they agonized, till crime abhorred, lawful might be, O trade wind turn. Well may some item sleep unrolled, never by the one survivor told. Him they picked up, where cuddled down, they saw the jacketed skeleton. Lone in the only boat that lived, his signal frittered to a shred. Strong needest thou be, the rescuer said, who has such trial sole survived. I willed it, gasped he, and the man renewed ashore, pushed off again. How bravely sailed the pinioned ship, bound outward on her sealing trip. Antarctic, yes, but who returns, too soon regaining port by land? Who left it by the bay? What spurns were his that so could countermand? Nor mutineer, nor rock, nor gale, nor leak had foiled him. No, a whale of purpose aiming, stove the bow. They foundered to the master now. Owners and neighbors all impute an inauspiciousness, his wife, gentle but unheroic she. Poor thing at heart knew bitter strife between her love and her simplicity. A Jonah is he, and men brew it, the story none will give him place. In a third venture came the day. Dire need constrained the man to pace, a night patrolman on the quay, watching the bales till morning hour. Through fair and foul never he smiled. Call him and he would come, not sour in spirit, but meek and reconciled. Patient he was, he none withstood, oft on some secret thing would brood. He ate what came, though but a crust. In Calvin's creed he put his trust, praised heaven, and said that God was good, and his calamity but just. So Silvio Pellico, from cell door forth tottering, after dungeoned years, crippled and bleached and dead his peers, grateful I thank the emperor. There ceasing after pause Rolf drew, regard to Nehemiah in view. Look, the changed master, roams he there? I mean, is such the guise, the air? The speaker sat between mute vine and Clarel. From the mystic sea, Laocoon's serpent, sleek and fine, in loop unlooped seemed here to twine his clammy coils about the three. Then unto them the wannish man draws nigh, but absently they scan. A phantom seems he, and from zone where naught is real to the wind's eye moan. Canto 38, The Sparrow. After the hint by Rolf, bestowed, redoubled import, one may ween had Nehemiah's submissive mind. For Clarel, nay his poor abode, and thither now the twain repair, a new significance might bear. Then grasses such as sprout in sand, Clarel observes in crannies old, along the cornice not his hand, the mower fills with such gnar arms, of him that binds the sheaf in fold, now mid the quiet which becharms. That mural wilderness remote, querulous came the little note, of bird familiar one of them, so numerous in Jerusalem, still snared for market it is told, and two were for a farthing sold. The sparrow, but this single one, planing upon a terrace nigh, was like the psalmist making moan, for loss of mate forsaken quite, which on the housetop doth alight, and watches, and her lonely cry no answer gets in sunny height. Like doting bees against the sky, what twitterers o'er the temple fly, but now the arch and stair they gain, and in the chamber sit the twain. Clarel in previous time secure from Nehemiah had sought to lure some mention of his life, but failed. Rolf's hintful story so prevailed. Anew he thought to venture it, but while in so much else aside, subject to senile lapse of tide. In this hid matter of his past, the saint evinced a guardful wit. His waning energies seemed amassed. Here and but here to keep the door, at present his reserve of brow, reproach in such sort did avow, that Clarel never pressed him more, nay fearing lest he trespass might, even in tarrying longer now, he parted, as he slow withdrew, Well pleased he noted in review. The hermitage improved in plight. Someone had done a friendly thing. Who, small was Clarel's wondering. Canto 39, Clarel and Ruth. In northern clime how tender show the meads beneath heaven's humid bow, when showers draw off and dewdrops cling to sunset's skirt and robins sing. Though night be near, so did the light of love redeem in Ruth the trace of grief, oh, scarce might it efface from wider rambles which excite the thought or study's lone repose. Daily did Clarel win the close with interest feminine and true. The matron watched that love which grew. She hailed it since a hope was there, made brighter for the grief's degree. How shines the gall ye watch in air, white, white against the cloud at sea. Clarel, bereft while still but young, mother or sister had not known. To him now first in life was shown, in Agar's frank demeanor kind, what charm to woman may belong, when by a natural bent inclined to goodness in domestic play. On earth no better thing than this, it canonizes very clay. Madonna hence thy worship is, but Ruth, since love had signed with fate the bond, and the first kiss had sealed, both for her own and Agar's state, much of her exile grief seemed healed. New vistas opened, and if still, forebodings might not be forgot, as to her sire's eventual lot, yet hope which as of youth could thrill that frame to foster and defend. Clarel, when in her presence strove, the unrest to hide which still could blend. With all the endearings of their love, Ruth part divine the lurking care, but more the curb and motive too, it made him but love's richer heir. So much the more attachment grew, she could not think but all would prove, subject and end to mighty love, that cloud which in the present reigned, by flushful hope's aurora stained, at times redeemed itself in hues of shell and humming, bird and flower. Could heaven two loyal hearts abuse, the death moth let him keep his bower. Canto 40, the mounds. Ere twilight and the shadow fall on Zion hill without the wall, in place where Latins set the bier, born from the gate who lingers here, where typing faith exempt from loss, by sodless mound is seen a cross. Clarel it is, as Celio's grave, for him the pale one, ere yet cold. Assiduous to win and save, the friars had claimed as of their fold, lit by the light of ritual wicks, had held to unprotesting lips, in mistimed zeal the crucifix, and last among the fellowships of Rome's legitimate dead laid one, not saved through faith, nor papal Rome's true son. Life's flickering hour they made command, face candle in doubt's dying hand. So some who other forms did hold, rumored or criticized, or told the tale. Not this did Clarel when to visit the hermit of the mound. Nay, but he felt the appeal begin, the poor petition from the ground. Remember me for all life's din, let not my memory be drowned. And thought was Clarel's even for one of tribe not his, to him unknown, through vocal word or vital cheer, a stranger but less strange made here, less distant whom life held apart, life whose cross purposes make shy. Death yields without reserve of heart to meditation. With a sigh, turning, he slow pursued the steep until he won that leveled spot, terraced and elevated plot. Over Gihon, where yet others keep death's tryst afar from kindred lie, Protestants which in Salem die. There fixed before a founded stone, with Bible mottos part bestrown, stood one communing with the bier. 'Twas Rolf him I knew, said he, down pointing, but 'twas far from here. How far from here? A pause. But see Job's text and wreath, what trust it giveth. I know that my Redeemer liveth. Poor Etherward, thou didst but grope. I knew thee, and thou hadst small hope. But if at this spent man's deathbed some kind soul kneeled and chapter read, ah, own, to moderns death is drear. So drear, we die, we make no sign, we acquiesce in any cheer. No right we seek, no right decline. Is it nonchalant of language sense, or the last indifference? With some, no doubt, 'tis peace within, in others, maybe, care for kin. Exemplary through life as well, dying they'd be so nor repel. He let his eyes half absent move, about the mound one's thoughts will rove. This minds me that in like content, other forms were kept without dissent, by one who hardly owned their spell, he in fulfillment of pledged work, among Turks having passed for Turk, sickened among them on deathbed, silent he heard the Koran read, they shrilled the Islam wail for him. They shawled him in his burial trim, and now on brinks of Egypt's waste, where the buried sultan's chapels rise, consistently toward Mecca faced, the blameless simulator lies, the turbaned Swiss, Sheikh Ibrahim, Burckhardt, but home the sparrow flees. Come, move, we ere the gate they quit, and we but shut out here with these, who never shall re-enter it. Canto 41, on the wall. They parted in the port, nearby long stone stairs wend the battlement of wall, aerial gallery, and thither now the student bent to muse abroad. The sun's last rays shed round a nearing train the haze of mote and speck, advanced in view, and claiming chief regard, came to, dismounted barefoot, one in dress, expressive of deep humbleness, of spirit scarce of social state, his lineaments rebutted, that, though all was overcast with pain, the visage of a doom-struck man, not idly seeking holy ground, behind his furnished horse did bound, checked by a groom in livery fair. The master paced an act of prayer, absorbed, went praying through the gate. The attentive student struck thereat, the wall crossed from the inner arch, viewed him emerging, while in starch, of prelate robes, some waiting Greeks, received him, kissed him on both cheeks, showing that specializing love and deference grave, how far above what Lazarus in grief may get, nor less sincere those priests were yet. Second in the dismounted list was one, a laic votarist, the cross and chaplet by his side, sharing the peace of eventide, in frame devout. A Latin he, but not as seemed of high degree, such public reverence profound, in crossing Salem's sacred bound, is not so common in late day, but that the people by the way, in silent viewing eyes confessed, the spectacle had interest. Nazarene Hebrews twain rode next, by one of the escorts slyly vexed, in litter borne by steady mules, a Russian lady parts the screen, a rider as the gate is seen, dismounts and her alighting rules, her husband checkered following there, like envoys from all Adam's race, mixed men of various nations pace. I, such as in crowded steamer come, and disembark at Jaffa's stair, mute mid the buzz of chat and prayer, plain clad where others sport the plume. What countrymen are yonder three? Their critic coolness in their eyes disclaims emotion's shallow sea. Or misapply they precept wise nil admirari, or may be rationalists these writers are, men self-sufficing insular, nor less they show in grave degree tolerance for each poor votary. Now when the last rays slanting fall, the last newcomer enters in, the gate shuts after with a din, tarries the student on the wall, dubities of recent date, scenes, words, events, he thinks of all, as when the autumn sweeps the down, and gray skies tell of summer gone. The swallow hovers by the strait, impending on the passage long. Upon a brink and poise he hung. The bird and in must needs migrate. Over the sea shall Clarel too launch over his gulf, even doubt and woo. Remote conclusions? Unresigned, he sought the end and tried to read the fathers with a filial mind. In vain, heart wandered or repined, the evangelist may serve his need. Deep as he felt the beauty sway, estrangement there he could but heed, both time and tone so far away, from him the modern not to dwell. Rising he walked the floor, then stood. Irresolute his eye here fell, upon the blank wall of the cell. The wall before him, and he viewed a place where the last coat of lime, white flakes whereof lay dropped below, then scaling off laid open so. Upon the prior coat a rhyme, pale penciled in one's nervous trance. Things near will distant things recall, and common ones suggest romance. He thought of her built up in wall, Christina of Calalto, yes, the verse here breaking from recess. Though immaterial, but a thought in some sojourning traveler wrought, scribbled, overlaid, again revealed, seemed like a tragic fact unsealed. So much can mood possess a man, he read obscurely, thus it ran. For me who never loved the stride, triumph and taunt, that shame the winning side, toward him over whom in expectations glow, elate the advance of rabble banners gleam, turned from a world that dare renounce him so, my unweaned thoughts in steadfast trade wind stream, if atheists and vitriolists of doom, faith's gathering night with rockets ready loom, so much the more in pathos I adore the low lamps flickering in Syria's tomb. What strain is this but here in blur, after return from sepulchre? Yea, on the ensuing day, he plied the host with question free, who answered him a pilgrim, nay, how to remember, English though, a fair young Englishman, but stay. And after absence brief he slow, with volumes came in hand, these, look, he left behind by chance, one book with the portrait of a mated man, treated of high church Anglican, confession fast saint day deplored, that rubric old was not restored, but under finis there was writ, a comment that made grief of it. Second work had other cheer, started from Strauss' disdain Renan, by striding paces up to Pan, nor rested but the goat god here, caked with the red cap in the twist of Proudhon and the communist, but random jottings in the marge disclosed some reader of the text, whose fervid comments did discharge, more dull than even dissent annexed. In either book was penciled small BL Oxford St. Mary's Hall. Such prove these volumes, such as scanned by Clarel, wishful to command some hint that might supply a clue, better enabling to construe the lines their owner left on wall. Canto 42, Tidings. Some of the strangers late arrived, tarried with Abden at the end, and ere long having viewed the town, would travel further and pass on to Siddim, and the Dead Sea win, and Saba. And would Clarel go? 'Twas but for days, they would return by Bethlehem and their sojourn. A while regaining Zion so, but Clarel undetermined stood, and kept his vacillating mood, though learning as it happened that Vine and Rolf would join the journeying band, loath was he here to disentwine himself from Ruth, nor less Lot's land and sea and Judah's utmost drought. Fain would he view and mark their tone, and prove if unredeemed by John's wilderness, augmented doubt, as chanced, while wavering in mind and threading a hushed lane or wind. Quick warning shout he heard behind, and clattering hoofs. He hugged the wall, then turned. In that brief interval, the dust came on him, powdery light, from one who like a javelin flew, spectral with dust and all his plight, charged with the desert and its hue. A courier, and he bent his flight, as Clarel afterward recalled, whither lay Agar's close inwalled, the clank of arms, the clink of shoe, the cry admonitory too, smote him, and yet he scarce knew why. But when some hours having flitted by, nearing the precincts of the Jew, his host he did Nehemiah see, waiting in arch and with a look, which some announcement shadow took, his heart stood still, fate's herald he. What is it? What? The saint delayed, Ruth, Nathan, and the news conveyed. The threat oft hurled, as oft reviled, by one too proud to give it heed. The menace of stern foemen wild, no menace now was, but a deed. Burned was the roof on Sharon's plain, and timbers charred showed clotted stain. But spirited away each corse unsepulchred, remained or worse. Ah, Ruth, woe Agar, ill breeds ill, the widow with no future free, without resource perhaps or skill, to steer upon grief's misty sea. To grieve with them and lend his aid, straight to the house, see Clarel fair, the house of mourning sadder made, for that the mourned one lay not there, but found it barred, he waiting so, doubtful to knock or call them low. The rabbi issues while behind, the door shuts to, the meeting eyes reciprocate a quick surprise, then alter and the secret mind. The rabbi bears to Clarel shows, and dark superior look he throws. Censoriousness, consciousness of power, death, and it is the Levite's hour. No word he speaks, but turns and goes. The student lingered, he was told, by one without, a neighbor old, that never Jewish modes relent. Sealed long would be the tenement to all but Hebrews, of which race kneeled comforters by sorrow's side, so both were cared for, clogged in pace. He turned away, how past the tide of Ruth's seclusion might he gain relief from dull and action's pain. Yes, join he would those pilgrims now, which on the morrow would depart for Siddim by way of Jericho. But first of all, he letters sent, brief yet dictated by the heart, announced his plans, constrained intent, reluctant, and consigned a ring for pledge of love and Ruth's remembering. Canto 43, a procession. But what, nay, nay, without ado, a vital word, dear presence true. Part shall I, break away from love, but think the circumstances move, and warrant it, shouldst thou abide. Cut off yet wert thou from her side. For time, though she be sore distressed, herself would whisper, go 'tis best. Unstable, it was in a street, half vault where few or none do greet. He paced anon in caved in wall, a fount arrests him, sculpture wrought, after a Saracen design. Ruinous now and arid all, save dusty weeds which trail or twine, while lingering in way that brought the memory of the golden bowl. And pitcher broken, music rose, young voices a procession shows. A litter rich with flowery wreath, singers and censers, and a veil. She comes, the bride, but ah, how pale! Her groom, that Bluebeard, cruel death, wedding his millionth maid today. She stretched on that Armenian bier, leaves home in each familiar way, quits all for him, nearer, more near. Till now the ineffectual flame of burning tapers born he saw, the westering sun puts these to shame. But hark, responsive marching choirs, robed men and boys in rhythmic law. A contest undetermined keep. As the bass in dolings deep, the serious solemn thought inspires, an unconcern of rallying sort. The ancient treble shrills retort, but true to part imposed again, the beards dirge out and so they wind, till through the city gate the train files forth to sepulchre behind. Left in his hermitage of mind, what troubles Clarel? See him there, as if admonishment in air he heard. Can love be fearful so? Jealous of fate, the future, all reverse mischance, nay, even the pall and pit. No, I'll not leave her, no, 'tis fixed, I waver now no more. But yet again he thought it over, and self-rebukeful and with mock, thou superstitious doubter own, beers need be borne. Why such a shock, when passes this Armenian one? The words dispatched, and wouldst recall, 'tis but for fleeting interval. Canto 44, the start. The twilight and the starlight pass, and breaks the morn of Candlemas. The pilgrims muster, and they win a common terrace of the inn, which lifted on Mount Acra's cope, looks off upon the town aslope. In gray of dawn, they hear the din of mongrel Arabs, the loud coil and uproar of high words they wage, harnessing for the pilgrimage. 'Tis special marks the Orient life, which rouse from indolence to toil, indignant starts and kindling strife. Though spite the fray no harm they share, how fired they seem by burning wrong, and small the need for strenuous care, and languor yet shall laze it long. Wanted to man and used to fate, a pearl-gray ass there stands sedate, while being saddled by a clown, and buffeted off her anon. Clarel regards, then turns his eye away from all beyond the town, where pale against the tremulous sky, Olivet shows in morning shy. Then on the court again looks down, the mountain mile, the wrangling crew. In contrast, why should these endue? With vague unrest and swell the sigh, add to the burden, tease the sense, with unconfirmed significance. To horse and passing one by one, their host, the black Jew by the gate, his grave salute they take, nor shun, his formal Godspeed one elate, in air auroral, June of life, with quick and gay, responses rife, but he the Israelite alone. 'Tis he reflects Jehovah's town. Experienced he the vain elation gone, while flit athwart his furrowed face glimpses of that ambiguous thought which in some aged men ye trace. When venture youth and bloom go by, scarce cynicism, though 'tis wrought, not all of pity, since it scants the sigh. They part farewell to Zion's seat, ere yet anew her place they greet. In heart what hap may Clarel prove, brief term of days, but a profound remove. End of first part.